It was kind of funny after his playing days. Great guy. What a great guy.
Oh, tremendous guy. Engineering major, like straight A student.
Yep.
Nicest guy ever off the court. And then on the court, he was one of the strongest guys that I've ever seen. He actually had a dunk. This is a true story. I'd love to go find the clip somewhere. But in the NCAA tournament that year, he dunked on Dikembe Mutombo, who you see on the Geico commercials, blocking cereal boxes and everything, and Alonzo Mourning. They had the same guys in the lineup. And I swear he dunked on him in the tournament. That's how powerful he was. And he was, 6'6", 6'7"?
Yeah.
And he would be guarding Shaq. He would be guarding big guys like that. And he was strong enough to do it. So very unique individual, for sure. So we've already taken the show back 30 years.
I know.
Mark, as we're off to a start here. So we've got a lot of things planned today. Today, Julio Jones is expected to practice with the Titans for the first time. And so as we sit here in June, Mark, this is one of the fun things that happens, right? There's not a whole lot going on. So on a story like this, it's going to get this will be probably the most covered practice that you'll see in June.
And interestingly enough, it'll be interesting to see what Julio Jones's practice schedule will be through training camp and once the regular season starts. Last year in Atlanta, he was hurt and really didn't practice at all. But obviously, learning a new offense, he wants to get immersed in it. So we'll see more participation, albeit in shorts. But still, it's a big story, obviously. With the trade and him finally getting on the field.
That is interesting. I was hearing things. We had Wes Durham on, another guy that we go way back with. And he was talking about Julio Jones. He takes care of his body. He works very hard, but there are times, right, where he doesn't practice throughout the entire week and then plays on Sunday. And he's got to the point in his career where, he certainly can do that and do it effectively. But you're right. This is one of the things coming into a new environment, brand new team, brand new offense. You would hope that he gets some reps with the new squad, and why not start today? So this is something to be watching for, right?
And Willie, really, it's sort of the NFL's version of load management when you talk about practice time during the season, where you got to be smart. He's 32 years old. You don't want to run him into the ground, and so obviously he has that sort of seniority. It's kind of like when Bruce Matthews was around at the end of his career. He didn't practice every day. He didn't need to practice every day because you knew he was going to be there on Sunday.
Those were fun times because remember back then, this is all sort of new, the NFL scene. They had the two-a-days, right? It was a little bit old school, even by those standards, especially compared to today. They would have two practices almost every day, and he almost never practiced twice, right? And there were days where they just give him the whole day off, and it was still kind of a foreign concept to all of us. But so those were sort of the early days of load management, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, you rarely saw some of the, older veterans in the afternoon practice. And now, of course, two-a-days are dinosaurs. I mean, they just don't exist anymore. But still, during the regular season, and the thing about Vrabel is he's very empathetic towards, the players in that regard as far as managing the entire season. And now you have a 17-game season instead of a 16-game season, and guys like Julio Jones, need to, practice in small doses. So I think you need to expect to see that as the season unfolds.
And of course, today it'll just be about seeing him out there in the number 2, right? Just running around, just any clip that somebody's going to get. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there to cover it. That's just going to be, the first chapter. Right, since the trade has been done, that alone is just going to have everybody buzzing, and it might be nothing but him in the individual drills, just catching a few passes at 3/4 speed.
And Willie, it's a cool story because the Titans have experienced a lot of success through the years, but they've always been the bridesmaid when it comes to getting that big name impact player. They haven't necessarily wanted to go for it. And in this particular instance, John Robinson, I'm sure, got with Amy Adams Strunk and explained to her that financially it's going to cost you this, it's going to cost us that. And this is, what we're going to dole out in terms of draft picks. But here's why it makes sense, why it's a worthwhile gamble. And she obviously green-lighted it. Here's Julio Jones and the Titans, ending up with the big name.
And this is something we're going to touch on a little later as it's going on and just going through the process of this. But, we were hitting on this yesterday, Mark, and you can go back. I remember, especially when they were still the Oilers, before they really got on the map, when they changed into the Titans, they went into the new stadium, they went to the Super Bowl. It was certainly different after that. But you can remember in 1997 and 98, they were probably the most anonymous team in the NFL. Without a doubt, right? In terms of fan base, they had, even though they had Steve McNair and Eddie George, other than that, maybe Bruce Matthews, not a lot of names that you recognize. They weren't a bad team, but they were just a fully anonymous team.
Yeah, they were. This was the team, that was on the heels that followed, the Warren Moon run and shoot era, and the franchise, had taken a real dip. Had gone into major rebuild mode. They blew it up. Jeff came on as the head coach, and a lot of people at the time thought he'd only be an interim. When they initially fired Jack Pardee, but Jeff turned out to have a lot of staying power, and he put that team together in his and Floyd Reese's image, as sort of a smash mouth team that played good defense. And it got him to a Super Bowl, got him to 2 conference championships.
And it certainly changed from there. But still being in this market, it's rare that you have the national spotlight. And I know it's June, but when you have a big trade like this that creates some sizzle, if you flip it on NFL Network right now or ESPN, as they talk year-round about the NFL, every single person has been weighing in on this trade. And so I don't know how you take advantage of that if you're the Titans from a business standpoint, but you have the spotlight for a rare time nationally.
I think, Willie, this sold them some tickets. I think there are people now that are convinced they're going for it. They're at least a Super Bowl contender. They're obviously not a favorite. Obviously, a lot of question marks on the defensive side. But I think this has really excited the fan base as well it should. And you're right. Fans like it when the national talking heads are talking about your football team. And the ESPNs and the Foxes and the NFL networks took a break from Aaron Rodgers and actually discussed the Titans for a few minutes.
That's certainly a nice change of pace, for sure. Well, that practice is scheduled to start at 11 o'clock. They actually moved the time, which is fine for us. There will be some media availability afterwards. We'll see if Julio talks. I don't know if he will or not, but that's going to be during the noon hour. We'll cover that. Also at noon, Jeff Saturday, one of the ESPN talking heads now, but a great center for the Colts for a long time. Great guest. We've got him at noon. We'll have Kevin Ingram. We'll have another reunited moment, Mark, Kevin, and myself. That'll be fun at 11 to talk about the Super Regional that starts tomorrow at 11 with Vanderbilt taking on East Carolina. And coming up around the corner, just in the next segment, we're going to talk to Tyler Kepner from the New York Times, who went to Vanderbilt, but he is now their lead baseball writer. We're going to talk about the biggest story in baseball right now. And if you're not a baseball fan, I think this is really an ethics of sports topic, and that is the foreign substances on the baseball. Baseball is going to try to crack down on it. How do they do it? We're going to talk about that coming up here next. So we're just getting started. A lot of great stuff coming your way today. Elliot Friedman at 1 o'clock to talk Predators and talk NHL playoffs. Barry Trotz and the Islanders have advanced to the second round. A big story up in New York. They eliminate Mark's Bruins. So that's going to be fun.
Well, it's weird. I was rooting for Trotzy, though.
Yeah, I know. That's a weird feeling, isn't it? Your childhood team against a longtime friend that you get close with covering the Predators.
I'm sure you're like me. My heart belongs to Barry Trotz.
How could it not? How could it not?
Yes.
All right, when we come back, Tyler Kepner from the New York Times. Stay tuned. Darren, Daunic, and Chase coming your way here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We are back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 1025 The Game. Willie Daunic, Mark Howard here with you today, with Darren and Chase on vacation. And Mark, just a quick shout-out from Aaron Rodgers. She's listening in the car right now. She said, wow, she didn't realize that we were doing the show today, so she wanted to say hello. So she's particularly excited about this combination.
As you know, I am extremely fond of your lovely wife. I miss seeing her, but yes. Hello, Aaron.
All right. Now, as we told you before, Tyler Kepner is joining us from the New York Times, and I'm sure Mark, as a lifelong Yankee fan, would like to maybe pick his brain. He is a former beat writer for the Yankees for a long time for the Times, and he has been writing about their struggles, and so I'm sure Mark is concerned. But we did bring on Tyler to talk about the big issue in baseball, about the foreign substances, that the crackdown is about to happen here. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey, Willie, how you doing?
I am doing well. And for the side note, Tyler has been doing the simulated baseball league that he and I have been in really since the pandemic started to sort of pass the time, and we've become complete nut jobs about this. In fact, his team is called the Peanuts right now, so he's in a pennant race right now of his own. And so I'm trying to take on the team that he's in a pennant race with.
Yeah, see, I named it after Peanuts Lowry. It was my third from.
Uh-oh. I think we got a bad signal on your phone.
Closer. You still there? Well.
Yeah, you're kind of going in and out. I'm not sure if we need to put you on hold for just a second, but try it again. Let's see.
Yeah. Why don't you put me on hold because I'm going through a dead spot here. Sorry.
Okay, going through a dead spot. Let's put Tyler on hold for just a moment. But Mark, just for background on Tyler, for people to know that don't know, again, it seems like we're throwing back to the 90s a lot here, but Tyler was a student at Vanderbilt. He wrote for the Vanderbilt Hustler. He's one of the Fred Russell scholarship winners, right? The Buster Olneys,
yes.
The Skip Baylesses. A lot of famous sports writers have come through, and he is one of them. He covered the Jan Van Bredekoff era. When he was there, and the Rod Dowhauer era in football. So that's quite the time to be covering Vanderbilt sports.
Yeah, those were the salad days, right?
So he had some interesting moments checking out those teams. But he now covers Major League Baseball. So we'll get him back on here in just a second.
Well, he referred to Peanuts Lowry, and for the uninitiated, Peanuts Lowry, was a third base coach forever. I remember when he was with the Cubs. I'm sure he was with a bunch of other teams, but that's what I guess his simulated team is named after.
Yeah, so the simulated league, of course, Mark, Terry McCormick was the guy that got me into this, and now we've gone nuts. So you can actually have a team from the 1940s, which he has, against a team from the 1970s, which I have, which you have some. I have some players that you would appreciate, like Lou Piniella, Rick Burleson, Willie Randolph, some guys from way back in the day. Yeah, I got the Rooster. My double play combination: Willie Randolph and Rick Burleson, and that's an odd couple.
That's a pretty good double play. I thought Terry would be, say, late '60s, early '70s, and called the Bobby Mercers. But
believe me, he's got it. He's in the '60s. He's got Mickey Mantle. He's got Bobby Mercer. So yeah, he's in the league. He is in the league. All right, let's see if we can bring Tyler back up. Tyler, are you there? Hang on. Let's see what we got here.
Hey, you're currently hitting a dead spot.
Okay,
Tyler, so
we're in the
we'll
dead
call him
spot?
back in about a couple minutes here.
Okay. Well, let's give him time to get to a spot where we can hook up with him. Mark, in the meantime, let's maybe lay out the issue here, because I don't want people to just sit there and go, well, I'm not following baseball that much. What is going on here? But because to me, this is really an ethics of sports issue. There's a rule in baseball that basically states you cannot put a foreign substance on the ball besides the rosin bag that you always see sitting on the back of the mound when you watch a game. But what's evolved over time is, especially with all the technology and analytics that are going on, the more spin you can get on a ball, the better off, the more effective your pitches can be. And slowly over time, as people have figured this out, they've come up with substances. A lot of times you can't see them, but they give you more grip on the ball. And nobody said anything for a long time. But now it's gotten to the point where 1 of every 4 batters is striking out, and the fans aren't really happy about the product right now. So there's now going to be a crackdown on this rule.
Yeah, the product has definitely suffered. I think Don Mattingly, of all people, said at times the game is unwatchable. And when you talk about spin rate, Willie, at 2,500 RPMs a minute, the batting average of a player, once you get over that, the average hitter goes from hitting 269 to 189. And that's how important spin rate is. Pitchers have been cheating for 150 years, and they've done it with Vaseline. They've done it with suntan lotion. They've done it with attack, with sandpaper. Whitey Ford, the late great Yankees pitcher, had a wedding ring, with a diamond on it that he would cut the ball up with. And it's all about, as you said, not only spinning it, but the ball moves so erratically, even the best hitters in the world have a hard time with it. And the pitchers have gotten such an advantage because there's a new product out that was invented by a bodybuilder who was in strongman contests lifting boulders, and he wanted to get a better grip on the boulders. So he had a PhD in microbiology, and he invented this product called Spider Tack.
So
which apparently is like this super sticky substance, and somehow, some way, major league pitchers discovered it and have used it to their great advantage.
So with that in the backdrop, let's bring Tyler back, who I think is ready to join us again. Tyler, we've just sort of laid the groundwork here. Our quick evolution of pitchers and what they've started to do to the baseball and why now it's a big thing. And Tyler is right to talk about this because he wrote a whole book on pitchers called K, which is outstanding. He even has a chapter on the spitball, but during that chapter he kind of gets into a little bit of this. So Tyler, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm good now. Thanks.
Okay.
Guys. I was rambling on about old guys from the 40s with funny names like Peanuts and Boom Boom and whatnot. So you didn't miss much.
Yeah, my team got shut down by Peanuts and Boom Boom and some other guys too here recently. So I'm not real happy with those guys. But Tyler,
yeah, we're not bad. Yeah.
Tyler, tell us about this. I mean, this is in New York, and the Yankees are one of the teams that people are focusing on. Garrett Cole, who is a great pitcher, was sort of accused of using the Spider Tack. He of course, if he does use it, and it looks like he might be, he would not be alone. So tell us how we got to this point.
Well, it's been, it's funny because everybody, I was on that that conference call the other day with Garrett, and, everybody saw how he was, dodging and weaving when Ken Davidoff of the New York Post asked him directly, have you ever used Spider Tack while pitching? Pretty clearly he has from that answer because he didn't want to lie, to his credit. But the one thing he said in that answer that was pretty instructive is that this is something that pitchers have passed down from generation to generation for decades. Just like a lot of what I wrote about in my book was sort of how they've passed down, the pitches themselves and the pitching grips. This is also a part of it. Pitchers, are very fidgety on the mound. You see them; they have their rituals and their, sometimes they just look like innocent superstitions, but sometimes they're, when that guy tugs on his sleeve after every pitch, or when he pulls down his hat a little bit, he's getting something on his fingers for better grip. The difference now, guys, is that they have the ability to measure precisely how much a ball spins, and they have some better products like this Spider Tack. So you can experiment now and find out scientifically just how much your ball is spinning. And if this doesn't make it spin as much, try this. And if that doesn't make it spin as much, try that. So technology is a big part of this, and it's it's leading to a lot of balls that are really, really tough to hit.
I heard Billy Ripken this morning on Major League Baseball Network because Garrett Cole pitched last night, and they were talking about how the spin rate's down a little bit, and he was saying that when it goes from 2,500 RPMs down to 2,100 or whatever it is, we're talking about like 3/4 of a rotation of the ball. But like you said, Tyler, these guys who have studied this, it does make a little bit of a difference, and a little difference goes a long way. As Mark just pointed out, the batting average, if you can get your spin rate up to a certain level here. So it's like nobody cared for a long time, but now that the strikeouts are so high, the hitters are now causing a stink. Whereas for a long time, okay, do whatever you want, we're still going to be fine. But that seems to be changing now.
Yeah, I think what's changing is that the strikeouts have become so, they've just swallowed up the sport. I mean, I remember a few years ago when there were finally more strikeouts than hits for the first time ever. That felt like a big deal, and now it's just taken for granted. There's no question. There's going to be thousands more strikeouts than hits in the course of a year, and baseball sees that as an enormous problem. So they feel like this increased spin rates on all these pitches is making pitching much better and much harder to hit. So, you look at Cole, again, and not to single him out, but this is what happens with the very best in the game. Bonds and McGuire and Sosa back in the steroid era, they were the best, so they got the most scrutiny. Cole, when his last year with Pittsburgh, his average RPM on his four-seam fastball is 2,100, and then he goes to Houston, and it jumps to almost 2,400, and then well into the 2,500s. So it's natural to wonder how that happened. Trevor Bauer talked about it, and his spin rate jumped really, really high, and he's on record saying the only way to do that is through sticky stuff. So, it's pretty rampant. It always has been to some extent, but now it's more sophisticated, and we're seeing the results.
Tyler, now it's going to be in the hands of the managers in terms of calling the pitchers on it. How strategic does this become? In hockey, the only thing I can think of is if a player has an illegally curved stick, you keep that in your back pocket until you need it. But how do you think managers are going to use this rule?
Well, I think they're going to look to umpires to make the first move. Really, to try to. The easiest thing would be for the umpire to go out and check everybody on their way in, or at least check guys randomly. And I haven't seen the memo. Last I heard, the memo wasn't out yet formally with exactly how they're going to police it. But it is a rule, so baseball can police it however it wants. If you entrust it solely to the managers, though, they're going to have to be 100% certain that their guys are not doing it, because that's why it's persisted for so long. Is because the manager's not going to have check the other pitcher when his own pitchers are doing it. It's mutual deterrence. When we have seen guys be checked, it was because they just were being so obvious with it, like Michael Pineda with the Yankees at Fenway Park a few years ago when it was all smeared all over his neck. That was
quite obvious.
Yeah, that was a little too obvious and almost offensively obvious to where the players are looking the same. Dude, like you gotta. It's not respecting us to say that you can just have it on your body like that. It's so obvious. So yeah, there's got to be a little respect involved. But yeah, I think it's much more going to come down to the umpires because it does put the managers in a tough spot potentially.
Do you think this is going to affect performances?
I think it stands to reason that it will. We need bigger sample sizes and everything, but I think. Yeah, I think we will start to see, more balls in play, maybe fewer strikeouts, but it's still. I don't think it's like going to solve the problem. I think there's a lot of elements to this slowdown of the game. Analytics points to the efficiency of trying to score with one big home run rather than three singles. But also, these pitching labs aren't going away, and regardless of how they get the spin, pitchers know now which pitch of theirs works best and which they should concentrate on and which they should junk, and what hitters' weaknesses are. That all that stuff has never been more apparent and more and easier to exploit. So I think it's things are really switching the pitcher's way. In baseball, you can see is like I said, just desperate to think of ways to fix it, even including moving the mound back in the independent league. So they're trying to get pretty creative wherever they can and flex whatever muscles they can without the union getting involved.
Tyler Kepner from the New York Times is with us, talking some baseball here. So, Tyler, let's say I would think there's a lot of these guys sitting there right now, probably a little bit scared. Let's say you're a middling pitcher. Like I think, as we found out from the steroids, right? Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were pretty darn good players before they started using the stuff, and then they became just, mutants, that whatever you want to call it. But the best players will still be fine. Garrett Cole, I think, will figure out how to get people out. But there's probably some relievers or some back-end starters that have really got to a new level because of something they found with these grips and the spins. They've got to be sweating a little bit right now, don't they? Like, there's a little confidence that you get that maybe you didn't have before. And that's what I'm really curious. If there's a drop-off with some pitchers like that and people start looking at the spin rate difference and saying, aha, here's a guy that's really benefited from spider tack or whatever this substance is.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because I think one of the reasons we've seen, strikeout numbers explode the way they have is because these relievers come in seemingly out of nowhere, and they just start striking out. It seems like they come in one inning and they strike out at least two guys. It's almost like on an assembly line. And obviously we've seen minor leaguers getting caught doing it, and I don't really blame them if that's the way to the big leagues is to improve your spin rate. Do what you need to do. It's not even like steroids where there's health risks or anything. It's just that if that's the way the game's played and they're not going to police it, you might as well do it. But now if they're going to police it, you're right. Maybe a lot of these relievers that this supposed just huge well of players to go to inventory. That inventory is going to decrease probably if a lot of these guys are just creations of sticky stuff that makes makes their two pitches play up, because basically the way it has been recently is you got a big arm in the minors, teach him a secondary pitch, and all of a sudden he's a big leaguer. But if you can't make the ball spin quite as much, your effectiveness is going to be exposed.
These are all things to think about. The other thing that I think, Tyler, is you look at and you look back on some sports, it's like they should have done this before, but it almost seems like they should come out and say, all right, maybe rosin isn't enough. Maybe we're not just going to go with rosin. Maybe we'll let you use the sunscreen, because right now you can see sometimes, and this apparently is something that's going on in the backdrop, people with the cameras everywhere are actually showing pitchers preparing, and you can see exactly what they're doing, where they're going, where they have whatever substances. And I've even seen in the bullpen relievers, they take the sunscreen and they spray it all over their forearm as they're getting ready to warm up. So you know what they're doing, right? They're not just getting, they're not just conscious of skin cancer, right? They're getting ready to be able to get the ball the way they want it, get their fingers the way they want it, all of that stuff. So is there maybe something where, to level the playing field, Major League Baseball has a compromise with the Players Association perhaps and says, okay, we'll let you use the sunscreen, you can use the rosin, but anything else, if we detect it, and pine tar has to be discussed for sure, because some of the stuff, as you were saying, Tyler, goes back decades, right? But we have to have a level playing field, so let's set exactly what the rules should be. You almost have to rewrite the rules, don't you?
Yeah, I think they should have something like that. I think pitchers have been saying that forever. You talked to Jim Cott, from way back about what it was like to try to pitch in Minnesota in April. It's unrealistic to think that you can just go out there naked, basically, without anything to grip that ball. So understanding that, you really do realistically need something. I feel like they should legislate something beyond just using the rosin bag, and to help pitchers out in those situations where they truly do need to get a grip. Now, when they're trying to artificially enhance their performance, then that's where it gets tricky, or it's sticky, you might say. And I do think, though, guys, when you introduce something that's legal, then it's ideally a level playing field. But then people are still going to look for an edge, right? Like I always think, like people say, pay college athletes a little stipend. It's like, well, if everybody's getting a small stipend, and then some booster comes around and offers you, hundreds of thousands of dollars or something, that's still, you're still getting more in there. So I mean, you know what I mean? I don't think it would necessarily stop the problem, but at least people would have something. No excuses anymore. No excuses just to say, I need something to get a grip. But the problem, guys, is that the union and the league hate each other right now, and I don't know if hate each other is too strong, but they just don't trust anything about each other. They really have an awful working relationship. So I wouldn't have any confidence that they can agree on this, an issue like this at all, since, I mean, look, they couldn't even agree on having a DH this year when they both wanted it. So, it's a universal DH. So it's a toxic relationship, and pretty soon I worry that we're going to be talking a lot more about labor, and we're going to wish we had, we were talking about foreign substances in the ball.
We're speaking to Tyler Kepner, covers Major League Baseball, of course, for the New York Times. Tyler, I got to ask you a question about the Yankees. Totally unathletic. They run the bases, like 5-year-olds. They're too right-handed. Their shortstop is out of position, probably. Their catcher's out of position. What's Brian Cashman going to do, to maybe right this ship?
Well, I mean, he's going to have to go out and get, I think, a left-handed hitter. His whole thing has always been like, well, how exactly do you suggest we do that? Like, who do we get rid of? Because if you wanted to trade, Judd, or trade somebody who's really good but just happens to hit right-handed, we're not going to do that just for the sake of doing it. He will point out, their righties actually hit righties very well last year, and they just keep trusting in the track record. I don't know that that's good enough. Certainly they've played well the last 2 days, but they won't play the Minnesota Twins every day. That's always the elixir for the Yanks. But they need a more diversified offense. I mean, it's not. I mean, I love baseball, all the time, but it's not as fun of a watch as a lot of teams are. I mean, they never run. When they do run, they run into outs. They seem to sit back and wait for the home run a lot, and when those home runs come, it's great. But when they don't, it's a lot of swinging and missing, and a lot of just station to station kind of, less exciting baseballs. Yeah, I mean, their pitching's been a lot better than people thought, and things will get better when Hicks is out for the year, but Luke Voigt gets back, and when Britton and Severino get back on the pitching side, but everybody's got injuries. The Yankees sort of have some fundamental flaws that I don't know how easily they can fix.
Tyler, great stuff. As always, I'll try to do you a favor in the noon games here. I've got Frank Tanana going against the 80s NL team led by Mark's favorite former Yankee pitcher, Ed Whitson, who's having an excellent season.
Eddie Lee, yes.
Yeah, Sim loves Ed Whitson, man. I've got Warren Spahn up against Louis Tiant today, so I'm feeling pretty good. But Spahn's been up and down. Like, he'll throw a 2-hit shutout, and then he'll get knocked around a little bit. But I need him for those innings, man. He's a horse.
All right, well, good luck to you. And we'll talk to you again here soon. Tyler, thanks for the insight as always. Good stuff.
All right, fellas. Take care. Thanks.
All right, Tyler Kepner from the New York Times. Good guy, tremendous writer. Mark, there's been a great list of guys who have come through Nashville. Mostly, not always through Vanderbilt, but that's a big source.
It's amazing.
Right? Good
really
training
is.
ground. And you've gotten to know a lot of these guys as they come through.
Absolutely. I knew Buster when he was covering the Sounds, and just talking to a lot of these guys, when they were still in college. It's really, you're right. It's amazing how many great sports writers Vanderbilt has produced.
Yeah, it's quite a list. Thanks to the Grantland Rice Scholarship, it's called. Fred Russell very much involved in that as well. Just legendary sports writers. We'll take a break on that. We'll come back and we'll discuss it a little bit more. We'll hear Garrett Cole's answer, because when you hear it, you'll say, okay, we have an issue here with the question and the tricky way. How are they going to try to address this? Because it's a problem and they got to do something. But the question is, how effectively can they do this? In the meantime, let me tell you about Loan Pronto. We know that the mortgage rates right now are super low, historically low. So if you haven't taken advantage of it, you really need to, and Loan Pronto's got the best way to do it because they've streamlined the process. It's all digital now. Many times you don't even need an appraisal. and they'll get this whole thing done in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, you could have that monthly payment for your mortgage down substantially. And, of course, when you refinance, for those that maybe haven't done it before, you get to skip 1 or 2 house payments. Now, how's that for your summer budget? But in the meantime, you need to be thinking long-term. If you can get that mortgage rate down, which you will, it's going to save you a ton of money over the long term. So take advantage of Loan Pronto and their system they call the zero-cost refi. Also, if you need cash right now, we know that your home very likely has great value right now. If you have some equity, you can take out some home equity through Loan Pronto, take $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 out, pay off some debt if you like, maybe reinvest in your house with a home renovation project. All of these things are available to you through Loan Pronto and the zero-cost refi. I'm telling you, the best part of it, it is trouble-free. It's not a whole lot of hassle. That's what it used to be with this process. Not anymore with Loan Pronto. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com and ask about the zero-cost refi. Equal housing lender. NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. Not all loans eligible for zero costs.
Have you ever used spider tack while pitching?
I don't. I don't know. I don't know if. I don't know quite. I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest. I mean, there are customs and practices that have been passed down from older players to younger players, from the last generation of players to this generation of players. And, you know, I think I think there are some things that are certainly out of bounds in that regard, and I've stood pretty firm in terms of that, in terms of the communication between our peers and whatnot. And I, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's, this is important to a lot of people that love the game, and this is including the players in this room, including fans, including teams. And so if MLB wants to legislate some more stuff, that's a conversation that we can have, because ultimately we should all be pulling in the same direction.
That is Garrett Cole, pitcher for the Yankees. Got directly asked the question, have you used Spider Tack? And that was the answer. There was never a yes or a no in there. And you can really tell he was rattled with the question, was not prepared to get it straight between the eyes like that, and had a lot of, well, I don't, it's kind of like either you did your homework or you didn't, Mr. Daunic. You did not turn it in. So it's like, Mark, you can kind of read in what you want about that, but he did sort of recover and give the backdrop. It is true. There's like sort of accepted practice, and then more and more people sort of push the envelope. They figure stuff out, and it gets to the point where you got to check it, right? It's as simple as that. And he's basically saying, listen, if you want to check everybody and you want to reel this in, as long as it's level for everybody, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, now I guess we'll never know, right? It's kind of interesting, Willie, and Garrett Cole alluded to this, because he is, in just about every sense, an alpha dog, type of player. He has gone to the Yankees, and the rest of the pitching staff follows him around. It's unbelievable. He's the Pied Piper. But there's also sort of a code, as you know, among players, that you're not going to rat each other out. You're not going to throw each other under the bus. And, Trevor Bauer kind of alluded to it. And he and Cole were college teammates at UCLA, not always the best of friends. And, he kind of, alluded to Garrett Cole using it, enhancing his spin rate. So you've heard other guys. And then Josh Donaldson just out and out dropped the name. And let me tell you something. You want to talk about unspoken communication. I watched that game last night. I watched every one of Donaldson's at-bats. And Garrett Cole, on one hand, probably wanted, to drill him. But then on the other hand, he really wanted to strike him out, which he did the first two times. So, I think he felt like what Donaldson was doing was out of bounds. Baseball was sort of headed in that direction. And now all of a sudden, some of these players are very sanctimonious about it. And I'm sure what Garrett Cole would have liked to have said is that, are you sure that you don't have teammates that are doing this? Are you sure that you don't cork your bat? Are you sure that some of your teammates don't cork their bats? As you know, Willie, having played the game, there's a lot going on behind the scenes in the clubhouse with equipment and everything else. I was a play-by-play announcer for a couple of years in AAA baseball, and I got schooled pretty well by pitchers on what they do to sort of enhance their performances, whether it's Vaseline, whether it's something else. And but I think Garrett Cole felt like Donaldson crossed the line.
Right, and it's like you need somebody to be the Jose Canseco with the steroids, or Mike Fiers, former Sound, with the trash can thing, right? You need somebody to jump out and change and get everybody's attention to where now there's more scrutiny on it, now there's more policing of it. Because I think here's the thing, Mark, it's hard for us to go back and quantify exactly, what difference whatever Gaylord Perry was doing, or Whitey Ford, some of the guys you mentioned. It's hard to quantify it. But now, with the spin rates and stuff, you can really track exactly what each substance might do to each pitch, right? That's the difference. And, by what most people are saying, it's rare that a pitcher doesn't use something to get the grip on the ball. It's just now what degree of the substance are we talking about here, right? So I think the players have decided as a group it's time to do something about it. And so I hope they take the lead. But as Tyler pointed out, the communication between the players and the league is not really good. So there's some skepticism on what the umps do about it.
Yeah, it's tangibly affected the game in just about every area. It's a little bit different when one player is doing it and everybody isn't.
Right.
I think
we're talking about the vast majority of pitchers, right, are in this category on some level.
I'm sure that you have interviewed Gaylord Perry like I have, and Gaylord Perry, does it with a wink and a nod, and will tell you that a lot of times it was more of a psychological weapon,
right? Exactly.
Against other batters.
You're in the batter's heads.
Yeah, exactly. But in this particular case, players are no doubt, like you said, the numbers don't lie, and when you see the spin rates, on these pitches, it's baseballs are doing things they've never done before, and they're doing it. And not only that, Willie, that we really didn't talk about, but this is an era of big arms. You just don't see those junk ball guys very much anymore. They're more a novelty than anything else. Just about everybody in the bullpen throws, mid to high 90s, maybe more, and you mix in that high spin rate, and it's a tough way to make a living in that batter's box.
And I think that's what really has, from the league side, everybody up in arms, because it's to the point now that the product is not easy to watch. You had Don Mattingly say it's unwatchable. Speaking of former Sounds,
yeah,
right. So sometimes this game is unwatchable because there's not enough action, and so there has to be an adjustment there, and it's probably going to hurt with some guys. There will be some guys whose careers are altered because they don't fit in what's going to happen here, but they have to do something, right? They've got to get this game to where there's more action, and not, nothing extreme. You don't have to change rules drastically, but enforce the rules strongly. I think it's fair to say, right? They've adjusted the ball a little bit to keep it in the park, so there's not these, 420, 430-foot home runs routinely by almost everybody in the lineup. But now that you've got to find that balance between offense and defense and action.
Yeah, and I think at times they're messing around with the game a little too much, to be, at least for my taste. And they've really, messed up a lot of the players, who were power hitters and no longer. I can give you an example. Gleyber Torres was a 30 home run guy, and now he's got 3. He'll probably hit 15 this year because of the new ball, and that's fine. But, mix with it, the spider tack stuff and the spin rates and all that. You don't want listen, I'm old enough to remember 1968. It was not a very exciting year in baseball. It was a great year for pitchers. Denny McClain won 31 games. Bob Gibson, had the historically low ERA and all that. But all in all, I'd rather see, more offense. And I remember that year there was a lot of 1-0, 2-1 games. I remember Roy White led the Yankees in hitting at 267. I remember Carl Yastrzemski won the batting title at 301. Do you really want baseball like that?
Well, and the numbers are right there.
Yeah.
They're very comparable to 1969 right now. So they've got to do something. And it's not only that the hitters are swinging differently, which is part of it, right? They're not trying to just put the ball in play. They're trying to go for the home run, even if it means striking
the
out
swing
more.
planes are different now. It's really funny when you hear guys, who have played long enough to go through the change. I heard an interview with Evan Longoria, talking about how his swing plane has totally changed because of the way the game is now. You would have never heard that 10 years ago.
Definitely not. All right, when we come back, we'll start hour number 2. Kevin Ingram is going to join us. He'll be calling the Vanderbilt East Carolina Super Regional. Then we'll turn our attention to Julio Jones as he takes the practice field. We'll certainly talk some issues with him as a Titan, and we'll cover the press conferences coming up during the noon hour as well. Jeff Saturday will join us from ESPN, at noon. That will be something you want to hear for sure. Elliot Friedman at 1 o'clock here on the show. Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on 102.5 The Game. Hey, time for hour number 2 of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Willie Daunic and Mark Howard here with you. In just a moment, we'll introduce our special guest. But first, remember to join Stars for their annual golf tournament, the Hart Golf Classic. That's coming up on Monday at the Vanderbilt Legends Club. So you can still get in there and play. They've got a couple of spots left in the tournament. So if you love playing golf and you want to, in effect, make a great donation to Stars just by playing, jump on in there. Sorry about that. Powered by Enterprise. It's just a day of golf. Young person's future will be affected just if you join. The tournament's a scramble format, 8 a.m. at Vanderbilt Legends. A shotgun start, breakfast and lunch are provided for you. It's a first-class event. Register today and support the hope, health, and connection of our young people. For more information, go to starsnashville.org. That's starsnashville.org. So just go ahead and join in. So we'd love for a couple of teams to join in late. starsnashville.org. You can find out how to get in touch and become a part of that. Now, it's time to bring in Kevin Ingram. He will be calling the action on West End at the Hawk. Nashville will be hosting a regional again. It's the Supers. It's Vanderbilt against East Carolina. 2 out of 3. The winner goes to Omaha. Kevin, this is a trifecta that has not been perfected in a while. Me, you, Mark Howard together. You guys, of course, for people that don't know, Mark and Kevin hosted a show for years and years over on a neighboring station. And, of course, I was a part of that team for a long time in the afternoon, but it's great to have you with us, Kevin.
A station that will not be named. Willie and Mark, it's great to talk to you guys. But this is the first time Mark and I have been on the air together, I think, since the events of August 10th, 2010. If I
was wondering
correctly.
I believe so. A day that will live in infamy.
That's right, dude. I've seen, Mark's done work. He's been on with Jared in the afternoon or Joe in the morning. It's like, wow, Mark's seeing other people. I don't know how to feel about that.
Life has to move forward, right? Life has to move forward. And for you, of course, you've been calling the Commodores here, and so over on West End, Kevin, this is, I try not to take it for granted, right? Because and
yeah.
You guys can both go back to days, and certainly I can, where this even making the NCAA tournament was a big deal. Now it's the expectation that you're looking to go to Omaha each and every year. You've got a chance to do it every year, especially if you can host, and so they've got another chance coming up starting tomorrow.
Yeah, they do, Willie. And it's funny. You think back to those early years when Tim Corbin was, first coaching the program, and there's a great picture of me covering the press conference and standing there with Corbs on the day he was hired. And I always think about that picture when he showed up there on West End. Nobody could really know what might be ahead. But you go back to that time, and you remember when they made the first super regional at Texas, and what a big deal that was. And they came up short in that, but that was such a big deal just to get to that point.
Jeremy
and
Sowers,
now,
right?
Yes.
Yep, Jeremy Sowers is exactly right. And, now you get to where this program is now, won 2 national championships and been to Omaha 4 times. It feels like, for a lot of folks, anything short of Omaha is a bit of a disappointment. But, yeah, it's really fun to be in this spot again. And, I was fortunate enough to go out there for the final series against Michigan a couple of years ago. And it's such a fun deal to go to that College World Series. So you love for these young guys to get that opportunity to go.
And Kevin, that's the thing I think that Tim Corbin is trying to downplay as much as he can, is that there's almost like this expectation level. I think the question something was like, "Do you guys feel like you're a heavy favorite?" I don't know exactly how they worded the question, but he was like, "Hey, I want to be the underdog, right? You can't escape the tag, right, because of what they've put together. I mean, they are going to be favored, but he's trying to downplay that because I think he's trying to appreciate how good every team is to make it to the Super Regional, including East Carolina."
Yeah, you get to this point, and you guys know if you make it to this point, and you're one of those last 16 teams remaining, you're a good team, and I don't care if they're from a power conference or not. I mean, East Carolina's been ranked the whole season; they've been really good. So, this is going to be a tough series, and I don't know that there are a lot of real heavy favorites in this whole thing because baseball is different than from a lot of sports, and it's so much about the starting pitchers you put out there, and what you have left after maybe you get past your top guns. In your pitching rotation. So that makes all the difference. And, I think it's going to be a tough series. And, he talked about that yesterday, underdog, super dog. And I was thinking about
hot dog.
Frank the
I think
dancing dog. Yeah, hot dog. And maybe think of Frank the dancing dog out at Hawkins Field. Maybe we'll see an appearance by him this weekend.
Maybe.
So it's Kevin, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
have we met?
Yeah. No. How much are you looking forward to that first super regional game? Presumably, Kumar Rocker against Gavin Williams of East Carolina, an All-American. That should be quite a pitching matchup.
Yeah, it really should be. And, Mark, it's a shame this game isn't a primetime game on Friday night because it feels like one of those matchups that you would get in one of those spots. But, I'm really looking forward to it. East Carolina has a couple guys who are Golden Spike semifinalists, and same thing for Vanderbilt with Rocker and Jack Leiter. But this will be the last time you presume that we'll see Rocker and Leiter pitch at Hawkins Field in their careers. And you think about all these great games they played just over a short period of time. Kamar's been here longer than Jack has, but he's such a competitor. Rocker is. Every time he steps out there, whether it's going great and he's pitching a complete game, or he's giving you 6 innings and having to work a little harder. The one thing about him, every time out, man, he's gonna bring it. He's gonna compete. And I think that's one of the things that Tim Corbin loves the most about that guy.
What about this? Could conceivably go 3 games. Who do you think the Game 3 starter is? Is it going to be Patrick Riley, who pitched fairly well in that clinching game against Georgia Tech, or Christian Little?
That's a great question. I wondered that same thing myself. In fact, so I even wondered who the Game 3 starter would be this past weekend. I went with Riley, who's been the Sunday starter typically down the stretch of the SEC season. Thomas Schultz held that role for a lot of the year, and then it was Riley. And I thought after that first inning, he really settled in and pitched pretty well, and kind of got in a little groove and got going there. You could tell, and you could tell really for all the starting pitchers that we saw last weekend that the juices were flowing a little extra playing in that tournament for the first time, or first time in a while. In Rocker's case, he's been there and done that. But I think that's a really interesting question. And Christian Little, that game he pitched against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, that was the best he pitched the whole season. He looked really confident, gave him about 6 innings, and he was throwing hard and locating the fastball well. And for a 17-year-old kid to be in that spot and to pitch like he did, I thought it was really impressive. And I think either one of those will be the choice. It'll be interesting to see, though, if we do get to that point. If East Carolina, or Vanderbilt, however these first 2 games go, you get to that third game, who the starter might be.
Kevin, I want to ask you about the game that you called that secured the regional for Vanderbilt. It's quite unique, and you do the games for the most part by yourself. I know Brooks Webb from the Vanderbilt staff comes in and joins you for an inning or two on a lot of the broadcasts, but you had a 5-hour game. Now, you've called a lot of games, right? But this is a 5-hour game that had 8 pitchers in the 11th inning. The 11th inning, I think, started at midnight, and the game ended at about 1:10 in the morning because it started so late at 8 o'clock. That was a really crazy game. That's got to be about the craziest game you've ever called.
Yeah, it is, Willie, and you and I were texting about that after the game. And maybe think of some of those hockey games that you've called where it goes 2 or 3 overtimes, and man, you start to get deeper in the night, and you don't really think about being tired or any of that kind of stuff. But when the game was over, man, I was just like wiped out. I was like, I hope I can, find my way to the car and get home after all that. But
driving a straight line.
You're right, exactly. It took so many twists and turns because Vanderbilt jumped in front early, East Carolina went in front, Vanderbilt back in front, and then the 8th inning happened when Jason Gonzalez hit what I think was the longest home run I've ever seen in that ballpark to center field. I had never seen anybody hit one, certainly not in a game situation, to that part of that stadium. And then Dominic Keegan puts Vanderbilt ahead, so it's 8-7, and you're thinking, okay, maybe you get to the finish line here in this close game, and then gets the 2 outs in the 9th, and everybody's ready to explode and be happy, and then a home run to left, and we're tied, and we're going to extra innings, and then Vanderbilt has it was just a marathon of an 11th inning because each team had a pitcher get injured and have to leave. That rocket off the bat of Jack Bulger that hit the pitcher for Georgia Tech, and he had to go out of the game, and then in the bottom of the inning, Luke Murphy had what looked like a cramp, and he had to come out. But the 11th inning itself was a marathon. It took, as you said, took over an hour. But yeah, it was fun, and just kind of feel that tension and pressure, and all those different things that went into that game. It was just crazy, and it was funny. A couple people have asked me if that was the longest game I had called, and I said no. There was a game back in 2015. Vandy was playing Ole Miss, and we did the game on TV. Walker Buehler pitched for Vanderbilt. And it was one of those games where I had a sinus infection or something. I didn't have much voice, and so I was just kind of hoping the game would go on by and get done and, kind of get some rest and be back tomorrow. So the game goes really fast. Walker Buehler pitched great. It's 5-1 going into the ninth. Colby Bortles comes up for Ole Miss and hits a grand slam, and 2 hours later, we're going to the top of the 16th. And so the way this ties into this series this weekend, I'm looking at the coaching staff for East Carolina. and there he is, Colby Bortles. And so I was like, man, I've got to connect with Colby Bortles and tell him about this. So I sent him an email yesterday and told him that whole story. He thought it was hilarious. He said, yeah, we got to meet up when we get to Nashville. But those are the two longest games I can remember calling, the one on Sunday and that one against Ole Miss a few years ago.
All right, so Mark, you called minor league games. What's the longest game that you ever had to do especially by yourself? I mean, that's the thing, right? You have no help. You can't pass it off to your partner.
Yeah, I called the 19-inning game, and I also called one that had a 2-hour rain delay that I had to keep coming up with guests, and it was exhausting.
It does exhaust
you. Was that one of the games where Brent Musburger showed up and called you big guy?
No, that wasn't one. It was in Mile High. It was a Mile High Stadium in Denver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Denver Bears were in the league because the Rockies had not been conceived yet.
It's an oxygen problem on top of everything else.
Yeah, exactly. That was my other problem.
I think the longest I can't remember a baseball game that I had that I've ever done that's gone that long. I did do the triple overtime in Chicago in 2015, but I had Brent Peterson with me, right? It was, and of course hockey, it's fast, and that's what you worry about is like I want to make sure when the big moment happens that I'm on this, right? So you're like, do I need to drink another cup of coffee or some Diet Coffee? Because it did get like 1 o'clock in the morning.
And Brent's great because you can hand it off to him, go to the bathroom, fly home, fly back, and he'll pick up the slack.
Right, and you have a thing called intermission in hockey. You don't have that in baseball. Like I know this, Kevin, this is a true story, and I'm sure they did it for you as well, but I got up to go to the bathroom at one point, and the guy was like, I'm holding this for the Georgia Tech announcer because he told me when this inning is over, he's making a run for it. I don't want to make him wait because he only has, what do you have, like 70 to 90 seconds, right, to get there and back.
Yeah, when we got to the bottom of the ninth, at that point I've had 17 Diet Mountain Dews, and I was like, dude, we got to the bottom of the ninth. I was like, I have got to take a break after this inning. So as soon as like the last out was made in the bottom of the ninth, I was like, I told our producer Alex, I was like, I got to take a pit stop here. So I got there and got back, and I sat down just as the first pitch was being thrown of the 10th inning. So it worked out okay. We might have had a little time where they were just hearing Nat sound from the crowd, but I was like, man, I'm not going to make it extra innings if we don't take a little break right here.
We've all been there because you hear the music, right? You're in the bathroom, you're hearing the music playing between innings, and when that music goes off, boy, I better hustle to get over there.
Well, you can pull a Joe Buck.
I didn't want to hear Steve Willard announce the first batter of that.
That's right. When the PA guy starts, you better be in the seat.
You can pull a Joe Buck and have somebody hold up a towel, and you can just go, in the trash can in the booth.
Fortunately, I don't think we've had to resort to that just yet, but you never know. It's there if you need it, right?
You got to do what you got to
do. Kevin, great stuff. I didn't know the conversation was going to go quite that far, but we covered it.
We covered a lot of ground. We kept it out of the restroom, so we did well.
Well, it's great to hear both of you on the air, and it's a pleasure to be the guy that helped put it together here. Have fun tomorrow in the booth. We'll be watching. Mark and I, of course, will be on the air while you are, but we'll certainly be peeking to see what's going on over at the Hawk.
Oh, man, great to talk to you guys anytime, and glad to be on here with you, Mark. It's been a long time. Feels like it's been too long. And Willie, of course, always fun to be with you.
Except for our phone conversation the other night, yeah,
right,
but not on the air.
I feel like I haven't talked to you in ages.
Enjoy it, bud.
Okay, see you guys.
All right, good stuff. Kevin Ingram calling the Vanderbilt baseball action over at the Hawk tomorrow at 11, Saturday at 11, and then if necessary, Sunday at 2 o'clock Central Time. And on the television coverage, it'll be ESPN 2 for the first couple.
Excited for Kevin, and I know you are. Yeah. You are too, that he got the opportunity, to call Vanderbilt basketball and baseball. I'm thrilled for him. And he's killing it right now.
Oh, and as we know, Mark, he's a pro.
Yes,
right? He does the work behind the scenes. He prepares. He's just really good at what he does, for sure. And, of course, for all those years calling the Belmont basketball here. So this has been fun to see him rise up. All right, when we come back, we will turn the page, and we'll keep an eye and see what's going on over at the Titans practice. But we'll talk a little Julio Jones and get Mark's feelings on what's happened here over the last couple weeks as this has come together. We've also got some notes from John Robinson, a conversation we had with him yesterday, and Tim Hasselbeck, a couple of little things that he pointed out that we'll get into a little deeper. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up next here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Right. Yeah, I think for a quarterback, nothing really changes. Whether you have, superstar wide receivers or, rookie wide receivers that are just trying to hang on the roster, a quarterback is always kind of tasked with making sure you're, keeping everybody happy. So, I don't think it changes. I think the thing you maybe hope is that there's probably some unselfishness, from both A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, where, everybody's cool with the role, and, you just trust that, the love will get spread around. I think it comes in from a play designing and calling perspective. And then I was on TV yesterday with Teddy Bruschi, who was obviously a teammate with Mike Vrabel and, still close with Vrabel. And he basically said that's his job. It was Robinson's job to get the good wide receiver. Now it's Mike Vrabel's job to get the buy-in from the player. And so I think the onus is more there than it is on Ryan Tannehill.
Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. That was Tim Hasselbeck from ESPN yesterday on our show talking about what goes through a quarterback's mind as he breaks the huddle. And maybe you're in a situation where you're coming up to the line of scrimmage and you're thinking to yourself, boy, I haven't thrown the ball to so-and-so in about 2 or 3 series. I really need to get him the ball. You want your mindset to be as a quarterback, just don't even think, right? Just react, run the play, let the coverage dictate where the ball goes. But you hope that you don't have to get too tangled up in stuff like that. And, Mark, what always helps is if you have players that aren't really worried about, okay, I've only been targeted 2 or 3 times today. What's the deal? Get me the ball. I'm open. But we know how wide receivers are, right? Part of the reason that they get to that level is they're confident in themselves. They want the ball, and there's only one ball.
Well, the great thing about Julio Jones is first of all, he is a team guy. He's a good guy, as we say in hockey, a good guy to have in the room. He's going to be a mentor and really sort of an example for some of the younger players. But he's a pro. I mean, he's a really good blocker, which is something, about Corey Davis that was sort of underappreciated. But I think he'll get the ball. We both remember when Randy Moss was here, and for some reason they couldn't get him the ball. They couldn't throw the ball to him. It was ridiculous.
It was crazy.
It was. Bart Finjung. I mean, it was, something that was shared by a lot of people. But he totally, for the most part, tuned out. I don't think that's not going to be a problem with Julio Jones. Mike Vrabel, again, knows what he's doing. Todd Downing knows, why they brought Jones here. He essentially, comes in, is as good or a better blocker than Corey Davis, and obviously a little bit better route runner, and downfield receiver than Corey Davis. And the other part of this equation that a lot of people forget or don't know is that Ryan Tannehill was 4th in the NFL last year among quarterbacks throwing the deep ball. He was 9 of 18 on passes over 25 yards. It might be more than that. But, all I'm saying is Julio Jones is getting a quarterback who can throw the deep ball. If he's healthy, he's a guy who's going to be open downfield. And that's another exciting part of his addition to this team. It's a good marriage. And I don't think Tannehill is going to really worry about distribution, because here's the other part of this, Willie. And this is, in my opinion, one of the incomplete aspects of the Titans as we're speaking today, and that's a dynamic tight end. I think some of us thought that maybe they could find a way to acquire Zach Ertz if the Eagles chose to cut him. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. But right now, Anthony Ferkser, looks like their best option at tight end. There are obviously others, but that was something I thought the Titans needed a big upgrade at, and that might not happen. It might be tight end by committee. But whatever the case, I don't think that's going to be a problem, Julio Jones getting thrown to enough, because this is primarily going to be a wide receiver-oriented passing game. Darrington Evans, I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the passing game coming out of the backfield. And, there's obviously the screen game, but I think the receivers are going to get plenty of touches.
I think you're right, but the reason I bring this up a few times, and we're going to hear what John Robinson had to say about the tight ends specifically a little later, because I think that's noteworthy. Because you're right, I still see an opportunity for them to, and if they can find a way money-wise to do it, right, add another guy. There seems like there's another piece to be added at some point, and you'll hear his answer on it. But it is such an interesting thing. Tim Hasselbeck pointed out that Julio Jones averages over the course of his career 9.8 targets per game, and that is the most in NFL history. And he's coming into an offense where they run the ball more than almost any team because they have Derrick Henry, right? And he's replacing Corey Davis, who, as you said, was a tremendous blocker, and he accepted his role. And there were a lot of weeks where he might get only 3 or 4 targets, right? That was, and part of that is maybe because he wasn't nearly as good as Julio Jones. But you see what I'm saying? There's a balance that you strike, and it's important that, and it does look like all of these guys have the right attitude. They want to win, and that's going to be really, really important there. But somewhere there are going to be some weeks where Julio Jones is going to have the ball thrown to him a lot less than he's used to.
Well, let's think back even to last night. Watching the Islanders eliminate the Boston Bruins, and there's a point here, and that is Barry Trotz, came to the Islanders, and one of the things, he told his players is that some nights, some of you guys are going to get a lot of ice time, other nights not as much. The only thing that's important here is the outcome. And hopefully the Titans can buy into the same thing, because there might not be enough targets every Sunday for these guys if Derrick Henry's doing what he's supposed to, and that's that's just the way it goes. If you've got a dynamic running back, a 2,000-yard running back, it sort of stands to reason that it's going to be hard for 2 receivers to get over 1,000 yards. It could absolutely happen, but the idea is to win the game.
Sure, and you got 17 games instead of 16, so the chances go up, I guess, that you could hit
exactly
1,000. But here's another one, Mark, I'll throw at you from Trent Dilfer, that he joined us because we were talking about the workload of Derrick Henry, and as you know, we have a lot of data on this. If you have that 370 carry year, the next year tends to be a tough one, right? With the wear and tear. And now you've got 17 games, in theory, that you're going to try to get through. And the way Trent put it is, he said, I'd love to find a way, if I'm the offensive coordinator, to shave off about 70 to 75 carries off of his workload. Of course, at the time, he had no idea that Julio Jones would be joining the mix. So you probably have, in theory, you have a great way of relieving some of that workload off of Derrick Henry, and that will equate to more targets for both A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So maybe everybody feels good about it, and maybe even Derrick Henry is on board with that. But you do kind of worry about – do you worry a little bit about the identity? This is the way they've gone about it. They've just pounded teams into submission, but they're going to have to change the formula a little bit, though.
No, it's a fantastic point. It really is, and I agree with Trent. 70 carries doesn't sound like a whole lot, when you stretch it out over a season. I mean, we're talking, 4 less carries a game, essentially. And that makes a difference. You're right. Derrick Henry stands to be an anomaly if he has another good season, and we all hope that he does. But historically, if you were doing an actuarial table, you would say that Derrick Henry would regress this year, would be a target of regression. The great part is, even if his performance dips a little, they now have that added weapon to make up for it. So I still think with the weapon of play action, the Titans can be really dangerous, with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and whoever else is out there, and hopefully a healthy offensive line. And this stands to be an offense that could be awfully fun to watch.
Oh, I mean, in so many ways, so many people are excited about that. The hype is going to be unprecedented, I think, because of that reason. So let's talk about Todd Downing's role in this, because, you know, when I threw out the question to Tim, I was asking him as a former for him as a former quarterback about what that dynamic's like of, hey, I want to be conscious of how I'm spreading the ball around. But really, the offensive coordinator has a lot of say in that too. So I wonder what Downing's philosophy is on that whole thing of, am I going to try to take some workload off of Derrick Henry, and how do I do it, and what's the identity of the offense going to be as a result? Because he's new, right? He's been around, but he knows exactly how the Titans have made this work the last couple of years, which has been a pretty darn good offense. How much is he going to tweak it?
Yeah, and Arthur Smith was really creative. He could go into three tights. He could have Kari Blasingame in the backfield, or he could go 4 or 5 wide and spread the field out, and that's what's going to be fun with Julio Jones. If you've got Derrick Henry in the backfield and you've got a crowded tackle box, all of a sudden you can spread those people out and attack them in a number of ways, and we're going to find out how creative Todd Downing is coming up this season.
Let's take a break on that. When we come back, let's talk about the role players and how they will be used. And we'll work in John Robinson's thoughts about tight end. Because as you mentioned, Mark, they went 2 tight end a lot. They went 3 tight end a substantial amount, probably relative to the rest of the league, more than a lot of teams for sure. And right now you wonder how that's going to look with who they have. And why would you want to do that, right? If you have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, why go 2 or 3 tight ends? Maybe it's time to look at more spread type of sets. But we'll discuss that on the other side, and also maybe where another tight end might come into play. But the role players will be important here, because you would think that Mark and I, we're going to be looking around going, if you're that 3rd or 4th wide receiver, and you got Jones and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry on the field, you're going to get a good matchup, right? If you're any good, you got to be saying, the best defender is not going to be on me. So we'll discuss that on the other side when we come back on Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Yeah, obviously that's the crux of it. But I mean, we're looking at really at every position. But last year we brought Jeff Swaim in for a tryout in August, and he ended up playing quite a few meaningful snaps for us. And we're glad that we got Jeff back here this season. We've got Anthony Ferkser back. We've got some younger players who are competing that improved last year, and some rookie undrafted guys that we really liked and thought that were draftable guys, potentially that we were able to get after the draft. So that group's competing. I think they're improving on a daily basis, and want to see what those guys bring to the table. And if there's a veteran that becomes available or that is available at some point, we'll certainly look at it and see if it makes sense for our football team. But again, those we don't play in. I say this all the time. We don't play until September, so you've got to work, and that's what we try to do. Is you're working through the spring and in this time of year to try to get as competitive a 90-man roster as possible, but knowing that there's some players that may still be out there when you get to August. Whether it was Kenny Vaccaro a couple years ago, that can come in and carve out a role on your football team.
That was General Manager John Robinson yesterday talking about where they are at this point on the roster and specifically at tight end past Swaim and Ferkser, the two guys that you might be familiar with, were part of the equation last year. Meanwhile, don't forget, the nationally broadcast tournament is coming up on June the 19th at Bridgestone Arena. It's the Cornhole Championships. You got to love that. The Happy Hiller 2021 USA Cornhole Championship at Bridgestone Arena. And if you want to escape the summer heat, this is an indoor event. Enjoy cold beer from the exclusive Lexus Lounge, great food, good times, watching the best cornhole players in the country. General admission tickets are on sale for just $10. Go to BridgestoneArena.com for tickets and more details. So that is something you're going to want to be a part of. It'll be something a little unique. If you like to throw the bean bags, it is good stuff here. Mark Howard is with me, Willie Daunic here, as we discuss Julio Jones, who presumably, and I haven't seen any real reports on the practice. I don't know if they went into the bubble because the weather might be a little iffy. I assume they might be on the field, but we'll look for media coverage. The post-practice media coverage is scheduled to be between noon and 1. So we'll get you some insight on that. Jeff Saturday from ESPN, the former Indianapolis Colt, longtime center, will join us at noon. So, Mark, you might have heard that clip from John Robinson. The role players will be important, right? Even though you could sit there, why throw it to anybody else? You got Jones, you got A.J. Brown, you got Derrick Henry. But these guys are important, right? So what did you think of his philosophy going forward at tight end?
First of all, he did a good job, and John has done a good job in terms of his waiver wire and street free agent acquisitions. But yeah, Jeff Swaim turned out to be a nice blocking tight end, which is obviously very useful. It's hard to find those dynamic, pass catching tight ends at this point without either paying for it with draft picks or money. But yeah, everything we say, of course, we've learned this. We learned this a long time ago. You couch it by saying we're only, heading to mid-June, and they don't play, of course, until September. So yeah, there's plenty of time for them to go out and get somebody, and I don't think John needs us to tell him that they have a hole there at tight end. So I'm not real worried about them addressing it. It's going to be interesting who they bring in. There's always somebody pretty good available that a team, feels like they can't afford cap-wise or whatever. So we'll just sort of have to sit and wait and see what John does about it.
Yeah, I like how he laid it out, and I think in saying that, I think he was signaling that they would like to have another guy. And there may be some issues of just trying to create the type of cap flexibility you're comfortable with. You don't want to go into the year with no room because things change and you might need to make adjustments during the season. So there might be some more things that he does to try to create that space that he needs so that he used Kenny Vaccaro, right? That was a huge pickup that they made right before the season started. Yeah. And they took advantage of the fact that a player of his caliber was available. I don't know if he thinks that something similar could be out there tight end wise, but that you never know. Maybe he's got somebody or a couple of people in the back of his mind there.
Well, he's got Jared Pinkney, of course, the former Vanderbilt tight end, who Coach Mason and his staff pulled the David Copperfield and made him disappear his last year. It was,
unfortunately, he hasn't reappeared.
Yeah, I know.
Anywhere.
I know. It's but that kid was the victim of coaching malpractice, in my opinion. But whatever the case, he's getting an opportunity with the Titans. So let's see what he does with it.
Yeah, and that was one. We talked to Jim Wyatt about this yesterday. He wasn't at the recent workout, which
was
very, very mystifying why he wouldn't come. So it's like you wonder what's going on there, because I think we were all curious to see if he could be somebody that ends up in the equation. But
I hope he has a good reason.
Exactly. It's like, you would be lining up. So let's maybe go into the role player thing, because, Mark, in sports, it's such an important thing, even though none of these guys are going to grab the headlines, but they will be very important. And I'll use the example, you follow the Celtics, right? When they put together years ago Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and why am I blanking on the shooter?
Ray Allen.
Ray Allen, sure. Yeah. So that was one of the first versions of, I'm putting together the big three. And then, of course, LeBron James and his big three for the Heat. And with the salary cap, you're thinking, well, why? You don't need anybody else. But the truth is, those inexpensive pieces that you put around those guys.
They had Allen, they had House, they had a lot of good role players.
Right, and you don't have a whole lot of money to spend on those role players, right? So you have to make the right choices. So you mentioned earlier Darrington Evans. That's one we all want to see a little bit more of. What can he help? We know what Ferkser is, right? He's going to be who he is. We got Josh Reynolds. All of these guys, it's going to be really interesting how they figure out where they fit in this, because that could turn what looks like on paper to be a really threatening offense to, a big-time offense, where you're talking about some type of offense that can match the Chiefs score for score. You're thinking, how do you win the Super Bowl? Well, you got to beat somebody like the Chiefs, and you got to score a lot to do it.
Well, and Willie, Josh Reynolds, to me, sort of equated Nick Bonino with the Preds. And here's why. When the Preds signed Nick Bonino, they envisioned him as a second-line center. What we all realized was he wasn't a second-line center. He wasn't a very good second-line center. He was a really good third-line center, and, of course, he did other things.
Right.
But Josh Reynolds is not a number 2 receiver. He's a number 3 receiver, and he'll be good as a number 3 receiver. And they've got other options, of course, with Des Fitzpatrick. It's going to be interesting to see, how quickly he can get on the field, and they've got some others. But again, the acquisition of Julio Jones meant that you weren't trying to bang square pegs into round holes.
Yes, and so that's where I'm wondering. It may not be necessarily a big name tight end. We were all kind of looking at Zach Ertz, saying, I wonder if that could work out. That doesn't appear like, for a number of reasons, it could be a fit. But is there a guy that's maybe a lesser name that, because he's going to get good matchups, and maybe he's the right combination of blocker and receiver? Like Ferkser, we know, is not really a blocker, right? So he's a kind of a quasi tight end. He's a tight end in name, but his role is more of a pass catching tight end, right? He's not going to be lining up and booming blocks, right? You'd like to have a guy who can block, but also is good enough to in a running situation, in play action and things like that. I don't think they're going to find a Jonnu Smith, but maybe there's an upgrade from what they've got.
Oh, exactly. And that, to me, would complete this offense. And, of course, the offensive line living up to its potential. We're not sure as the season goes along how many games, who's going to play at right tackle. But by and large, we pretty much know the way the rest of the line is going to go.
Right. And that's another one where, maybe there's not a lot of depth. There's some question marks. You hope that you get a little better luck this year than last year with injuries on the offensive line, because it's easy to overlook how important it is when you say, well, you got everybody's focused on the weapons, the skill players, as you would expect. But that is true, right? You need, it sounds obvious to say, but you've got to have great offensive line play to put it all together.
Yeah, and we just hope that Dylan Radunz, follows the pattern of Nate Davis, who was thrown in there, struggled a little bit, but really, had a great year last year. His Pro Football Focus numbers were really impressive, and at least for the interim, you've got a solid guy like Kendall Lamb, and he'll be sort of a placeholder until Radunz is ready.
What are your thoughts on what Darrington Evans could be as under the category of role players who could help in a defense that's going to be very focused on who, right? But Evans, you would think, is going to be in sets where Derrick Henry is on the sideline, right? So where do you see him in his role?
Well, I think he gives them an element that they really haven't had. To me, contributing in a significant way. First of all, he's got to stay healthy. But, towards the end of the year, we saw flashes. And this is a guy, who looks like, they can throw the ball to him, coming out of the backfield. And to be able to do this, especially when you have two dynamic receivers and you can have a guy, running underneath coverages like Evans, suddenly, that's a weapon. That's a chain mover. I think, that's something else that Downing has in his arsenal, especially, in the absence of a really dynamic tight end.
Do you get the sense that they're pretty high on him? He's not going to get a lot of scrutiny. I'm sure during training camp when, we're going to be analyzing backwards and forwards, who catches passes at practice and all of these things. But I just wonder deep down, do they have a sense that this guy he's got a lot more to offer than we saw last year?
Oh, absolutely, Will. I think that they view him as a change-up back and the guy that would allow them to scale down the touches that Derrick Henry gets and maybe, lessen the burden a little bit to extend his career. Ideally, if Evans is healthy, I'd like to see him as a ball carrier. Dion Lewis was never seemed to be that guy. Never seemed to be that receiver. He was okay as a receiver, but they need a smaller sort of, I don't want to say scat back, but sort of a smaller guy who can still run between the tackles. And I think they envision Evans as that guy.
One thing I've been impressed with Ryan Tannehill on is from the moment he took over, and of course they're 18-8 since this moment, but he was really good right from the get-go of, finding the Tajay Sharps for a key catch here and there, and working the other tight ends, Ferkser in there. He can find the secondary guys when necessary. And so if I'm one of those guys, I think I look at that and I say, you know what, if I do my job, I can be productive. So the Cam Batsons, the other guys are just, scattered across the roster. The rookie that they drafted from Louisville, you wonder where he's going to, fit into this. But there's going to be some opportunities there for these guys.
Yeah, unlike Marcus, who we always preface Marcus by talking about what a wonderful human being he was and all that. But Marcus didn't exactly read the whole field. Tannehill's different. Now, when the blocking's not there, it really doesn't matter. We saw he can look as bad, as the next guy. But that to me is not an indictment on him. It's an indictment on the offensive line. But when he, is protected sufficiently, he will dot the field. He will look at all targets, and that's what you want. And that's why I don't think there's going to be an issue about ball distribution in terms of the passing game.
It is really amazing to think back over the last couple of years. of what Tannehill is compared to how we used to perceive him from afar. You, of course, up close with all your coverage of the Titans, had many a conversation about the strengths and the flaws of Marcus Mariota. And when they brought in Tannehill, nobody could foreseen this. But so, are you pretty amazed at how we almost now take for granted that you've got one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league? I never could have foresaw this 3 years ago.
Well, first of all, I'm amazed that the Dolphins didn't see it, and they gave him up for a 4th-round draft pick. Which is one of the great bargains in recent NFL history for a starting quarterback. We saw it in camp, and I have to admit, I was on Team Marcus. Because Marcus did enough. Every now and then, every now and then, Marcus would show you something, and you go, you know what, he's got it. And then he'd have a couple of games. You know what? I don't think he has it.
But that was the thing. He did enough to keep the hope alive.
Oh,
right. If he were horrible, it would have been easy to see. But he did enough good things to he kept you coming back.
And I was one of the first people who said when they acquired Tannehill, you're running the risk of a quarterback controversy with this guy because he'll have a couple of good preseason games and people will go nuts. And he did. And in reality, he was showing us that he was a lot better than the Dolphins or maybe even the Titans thought. And then, of course, they decided to make the quarterback switch, and he made idiots of many of us. And, it's funny, Willie, how narratives change about certain players. The first year Tannehill was in there, everybody goes, it's kind of a fluke. He'll regress to the mean, last year, and of course he didn't. He was still really good, and of course the knock on him now is, of course, can he lead the Titans deep into the playoffs? Can he be that guy? And that's fine, but I also know what I see during the regular season. And it's pretty good. And now you hear people saying, well, Tannehill's a lot better than we thought. Maybe we were wrong about Tannehill. And then they look at his long ball numbers and realize that he's not Charlie Checkdown, that he's a guy who can throw the ball down the field with authority. And
without a true deep threat.
Exactly.
Which is going to change this year.
Exactly. So, we've been through a lot with the Titans, and finally, in a situation like this, they end up on the right side of it.
No doubt. All right, when we come back, Jeff Saturday is going to join us from ESPN, the longtime center of Peyton Manning's Colts for all those years, just in case you don't place the name. You see him all the time talking NFL on ESPN. He's a great analyst. We'll pick his brain when we come back, and then also during the noon hour, we'll have some post-practice coverage. Reportedly, Julio Jones is going to take the field with the Titans for the first time today in the OTA, and so we'll keep an eye on that, maybe hear from Mike Vrabel. Who knows? Will Julio talk? I don't know. We'll see. If he does, we'll certainly play you some clips of what he has to say. And don't forget Elliot Friedman at 1 o'clock. This is Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We move on to the second half of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Willie Daunic and Mark Howard here with you. Darren and Chase on vacation today and tomorrow. They'll be back with us on Monday, taking a little long weekend. Right now, the Titans are continuing their OTA work. A little later this hour, we expect to have some media availability. We'll see if Julio Jones is part of that. If he is, we'll certainly have some coverage for you. He has not spoken since being acquired by the Titans. And if nothing else, we'll hear from Mike Vrabel. So a lot of good things going on. And with that in mind, we call upon an outstanding analyst for ESPN, Jeff Saturday, longtime center for the Indianapolis Colts. Jeff, it's a pleasure to talk to you once again. Thanks a lot for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Yeah, glad to be here, man. It's pretty easy week right now, right? For all the change.
It is.
I mean, we're just kind of laying it out. This is as good as it gets right now in June.
No question, and Mark, of course, is a veteran of sports talk in this city. June, in the middle of June, is not always the most exciting month of sports talk, but with this acquisition of Julio Jones, it certainly has given us some things to chew on. So, Jeff, let's just start with you along those lines. When did you start to think, this could happen? It might be the Titans, and wow, if it is the Titans, what does this mean?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago, honestly. I mean, I had always been under, my two favorite places, San Francisco was one, Tennessee was the other, that I thought would be actual fits that could happen. And so with Tennessee, as it kind of moved on and you saw the play, I think it actually is a great deal for both. And I think Tennessee gets a player who is motivated, is still very capable of not only commanding certain types of coverages, but being able to beat it. And for what they're trying to do offensively, I think it fits perfectly, especially losing Arthur Smith to the Falcons to go, call plays. It's going to be a little bit different, but man, you get two big body receivers like they got and that big body back there running it. And don't forget how athletic Tannehill is. I mean, like you got a formidable opponent back there in the skill position. So, they look a lot like offensive linemen, which always lets me smile. You know what I mean? I like all those guys. They're closer to me than they are to the typical receiver, so I appreciate that.
Well, Jeff, this is one thing that I'd love to get your outside perspective on this, because everybody's got their opinion here. They know, they talk about this team so often. But in your mind, what is the difference in upgrade between Corey Davis and Julio Jones in terms of where they are at this stage of their career? Obviously, I mean, the track record for Julio speaks for itself, but Corey Davis did have a nice year last year. They elected to let him go. The price for each isn't that different. Of course, one guy's at a different stage of his career. So what's the net gain in your mind?
I mean, honestly, I think it's pretty substantial. Listen, the one thing about Julio, when he is healthy, and has been on the field, his productivity, you're not going to match up one-on. Like you're going to have to bracket. You have to do something yards after the catch with his hands. I'm not trying to slight, Corey Davis, but that's not, to me, it's a substantial upgrade from what Julio Jones brings to the organization. And if you get 3 years out of Julio, this is a home run for Tennessee. I mean, I will put it this way: even if Corey Davis had stayed in with the Titans, I would have favored the Colts in this division for next season because of the Colts defense and how good they are. And if Wentz plays even decent, I would have. With this, I put them dead even. I mean, I moved it up that much where I felt like, I feel like the kind of the Browns and the Chiefs, obviously, and the Bills kind of have the AFC cornered a little bit, from a roster perspective. But when you get down Colts, Titans, like these teams that could surprise you, the Ravens, like these teams that are right on the cusp of being able to push those teams, I like where they are. And I think this is a huge upgrade, not only from the receiver perspective, but the way that defenses have to play you will allow for sustainability on the offense, which will help the Titan defense, and we know that's an area that needs to be improved. And so I think it complements the team extremely well.
We're speaking to ESPN NFL analyst Jeff Saturday. Jeff, what about Ryan Tannehill and just how the narrative has changed about him, especially his ability to throw downfield?
Oh, it's been a huge change. I mean, I liken it to Josh Allen. It wasn't a 1 year type thing that happened with Josh Allen that we all kind of. Well, at least I know. I'm not going to pretend I was that smart. I was shocked at how well and the jump that he made. That fast. But if you've watched him kind of progress with the Titans and what he's been able to do, it's been remarkable. I mean, I guess the calmness within the pocket and within the offense, his command of it, I've been extremely impressed by. I think his athleticism goes undervalued and truly under-discussed in the red zone. He is someone that, I mean, think about it right now when you get in the red zone with Brown, Julio, Henry, and now with Tannehill as well. I mean, you literally are going to have to just match up, man, because all of those guys can hurt you. And so I think it's been a huge pickup for the Titans, and he's earned his contract, every bit of it, and continues to impress us by the way that he plays.
You played against Mike Vrabel. He came into this job relatively inexperienced, not only as a head coach, but as a coach, period. What has impressed you in his development in this job?
Oh, his conviction to what he believes is going to win. I think that, to me, has been a breath of fresh air. He has not tried to be anything he is not from a coaching perspective. He's not afraid to make a move and try something. Situationally, I've been impressed by him. But conviction, he likes to play ground and pound. He likes to be physical and play nasty. So I appreciate that. That's him. I mean, I know him personally as well. We did the CBA stuff together, so we got to spend time together. And so I think the team is a reflection of his personality, which I like. And here's the other part. I think from a relational standpoint, I think he is fantastic with his team. Like, you see guys and the way they talk, and I appreciate that. He doesn't have this, standoffish, my players are my play. I mean, I think he does a really good job of people understanding that he's the head coach, right? He's got a job to do, and he's going to do his job. But I appreciate the relationships he has with his players, and it seems that he kind of can do both, be a hard-nosed, tough coach, but also be, quote, a player's coach simultaneously, which I'm all for. And I think players that have played to the level that he has, he's totally confident in himself, man, and it shows.
We're talking to Jeff Saturday, and Jeff, you're no stranger to being on offenses that had a lot of weapons, right? A lot of different people that could hurt you. What is important? Because this is getting talked a lot here, as you can imagine. Julio Jones is used to getting, on average, about 10 targets a week. That may not be the case every week here. You got a lot of other guys that you might spread the ball around on a particular week to, especially when you have maybe the best back, the most powerful back in football. What's important on a team? How did you guys handle it in Indy in terms of keeping everybody on the same page, having the right attitude, knowing that individually everybody wants the ball?
Right. Selfless, and that's the conversations we had at the beginning of every season. Every week is, you don't know who's going to be the guy who's going to get the touches. You don't know how defenses are going to play you and what they're going to try to take away. But you have to be selfless when it's not your turn. You still got to run. If you're running a clear out route, you got to run at 100 miles an hour, right? Like, because you ain't getting it, that you can't jog it off, or vice versa. When it is your turn, appreciate what the other guys are doing. And I think that was what made us so effective is you don't know you don't know if defenses are going to try to double Julio or Brown or bring 8 or 9 in the box to stop Henry and make you beat him with the arm. And every week it's something different. And honestly, every half of football can potentially be different. But whatever we have to do to win, that's the most important thing. And that we all know that when one of us wins, we all win. And so if it's a guy who gets 10 targets or 10 touches and makes the most of them, that's what we're going to do. And if next week it's different, that's what we're going to do. But you have to be at that point where everybody understands that this thing is going to get moved around and be okay with it. And again, you and I both know everybody wants the ball. You know guys don't sit on the bus happy with a 3-catch, 30-yard game. But if that's what it required for us to win, sometimes you take those and move on. But I can tell you, I've been on a lot of those offenses where everybody got plenty of touches, plenty of receptions, plenty of yards, plenty of touchdowns. So if you do it right, everybody can be really happy.
Tell me this, too. This is another dynamic that we're talking about where maybe you're that guy who's the third or fourth wide receiver or that back out of the backfield who is under the radar, but you're going to maybe get improved matchups because of these stars that you have on the field that take all the coverage, like Julio Jones does. Who was the best back in your day who maybe carved out a role for himself, maybe a career for himself, being that secondary guy, but playing the role well?
Oh yeah, Dominic Rhodes. I mean, he was a running back for us, and whether it was with Adrian or with Joseph Adai, like Dami, he was a heck of a running back, man, and understood when it was his time. He was going to make the runs, but he was also really, really strong coming out of the backfield. And to your point, understood matchups, like what he did well and how he could match up. And we had a number of guys who came through. I could think of receivers. I mean, you think of guys like Brandon Stokely who go way under the radar from a receiver perspective because we had Dallas Clark and Reggie and Marv. But, I mean, there were seasons I think Stokely got 100 catches or somewhere close because of exactly what you're saying. Matchups matter, and being able to find your fit and maximize your value. And so I listen, fans and casual observers of the game don't always see those guys. But I'm telling you, from an offensive line perspective and from a team perspective, there's a reason you got 53 on your team, and it matters. And those guys having seasons efficient and productive take you from a 9 to 10 win team to 12 and 13 wins where you're setting the world on fire. And those are big players for your team.
Jeff, last year Derrick Henry had 378 carries. If you're Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator, how important is it to winnow that number down to about 300?
Oh, man, listen, that's such a tricky – like I understand longevity and I understand why people – but there are times when the game just dictates what you're going to do. And I think adding Julio will obviously allow for different matchups and different situations. We were always one of those that you wanted to keep the freshest guy on. The problem with Henry is he's a battering ram. And so as the game progresses, he gets better because he's been so physical in quarter one and quarter two. So, I think it's a lot easier, in the church they say, it's easy to preach, hard to live. As an offensive coordinator, that's easy. That's easy to say, hard to do when you're looking back at that dude and he's doing what he's doing. I can tell you, he ain't gonna be the first guy I'm taking off the field. I don't blame him.
It's a subject you guys pretty much talk about every day on NFL Live. What does your gut tell you about the way this Aaron Rodgers situation with the Packers is going to play out?
I think when the season starts, he'll be back. I mean, look, he's a 37-year-old quarterback who just won the MVP. It would be hard for me to see him not playing football. And if you're the Packers, there's no possible way you trade him. And so at the end of the day, I think that the relationship will probably be. Hopefully, it's better. But even if it's not, you saw what he did when his feelings were hurt. He goes out and wins the MVP. I think he's professional enough to know that he gives the Packers the best chance to win a Super Bowl, and that includes the teammates that he works with and is close friends with. And so I don't think anything happens soon. I think both are just going to dig in a little deeper. But when you get down to the season time, I think he ends up playing.
Jeff, great stuff. We're all hoping for that because you don't want to see one of the greatest of all time sitting out. Because, like you said, it's tough to trade that guy. There's no way you could put a price tag on what he's worth. Thanks a lot for joining us for a few minutes today, and we'll talk to you again down the road.
Always enjoy it. You guys have a great one. Thanks so much.
Jeff Saturday, longtime center, Indianapolis Colts. Always like comparing his days with those great Colts teams that we saw come through here every year to now what the Titans are dealing with. And Mark, I'm looking at my timeline on Twitter. I don't know. I guess 12:15 was the minute, but the media was given the green light to show some clips from Julio Jones on the field, and they're coming through like wildfire now. So, yes, I see number 2 in a Titans jersey.
There you go.
So we'll talk more about that on the other side, and we'll be on standby. We'll hear some media things. I'm assuming this video is from a little bit earlier in the day, but I'm not 100% sure. They changed, but they had initially this morning sent out some word that they had moved the practice to 11 a.m. So we're just now seeing some clips of Julio Jones running routes, etc. Pretty exciting stuff. Stay tuned. We've got more coming here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Hey, make sure you listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9, noon, and 3. In fact, I just heard they gave the keyword out at noon, so make sure you're listening every day for that. When you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter that keyword for a shot at 1,000 smackers, 1,000 bones. Not a bad deal there. So just listen, and you can win. We're listening to hear when Mike Vrabel or other Titans take the podium here, they are looks like they're gathering for the post-game media conference. And it is fun to see those clips. Julio Jones wearing the Titans uniform. He went through the workout today. So, Mark, we touched on this at the beginning of the show, but I think it bears repeating. We know the Titans have not maximized at times. You know, they went through a tough period, right? The last days of Bud Adams when he was really getting up there in age, and then the adjustment in leadership for a couple years after that. They sort of lost touch for a while. They didn't have a great, well-oiled machine. In recent years, much more stability. They've hired some new executives. I really am hoping that they can maximize this opportunity here. And I said this yesterday on the show, and I think this is a great opportunity. You said it right, so I know you agree with me, selling tickets, but also making sure you fill the seats with your fans, right? We know it's tougher and tougher these days to keep all of the seats filled with your fans because how many fans like to travel, especially to Nashville for a weekend, but where can they make some inroads there?
I think doing stuff like this, I think they've sent a clear signal to their fans that they're all in. And I agree with you, Willie. I think you have to do that now. I didn't necessarily think so before, and I don't think you make a move just for the sake of making a move. But I think moving aggressively when you have that window of opportunity, I think is important. Yeah, the days of Floyd Reese were a lot different because a lot of it involved, salary cap management. And then, of course, you had, Silent Mike Reinfeld, who's a very nice man, but, that was a forgettable regime.
Rustin, not the most charismatic personality.
No, he was not. He didn't. He did not have charisma. But Rustin Webster. It was a reign of error, and then John Robinson comes in, and it hasn't been perfect. I mean, we know he's had a few double bogeys, but he's always been aggressive, and I like that. He's undeterred. If he makes a mistake, he shakes it off, and that doesn't change the method of building this team. And I think that Amy Adams Strunk, wants the fans to know that they're in it to win it. Risky. You got to risk it for the biscuit, and all those cliches. But I like what they're doing, and this is the time to go after Julio Jones. And I think he'll be, he's excited to come here. It's not like bringing somebody in where they're like, I'm kind of slumming it here, but I think they can get a lot of production out of him, and I think we're all excited to see Ryan Tannehill throwing the deep ball to Julio Jones. So absolutely, Willie. And this is a guy who is a bona fide Hall of Fame receiver. There's not a whole lot of doubt here. So he's still got some left, we believe. And I agree with Jeff. If they get 2 good years out of him, this is a great deal.
I'm reading by some various media members that Julio Jones will address on the Zoom the Nashville media. So we will carry that live. So if you're listening here, we'll have it covered. Whenever that starts, we will pass it over and listen in on the very exciting Zoom. As you know, Mark, in these days with people's internets and things like that, it's not always the smoothest transitions when we carry it live, but it is entertaining at times.
Well, he's a lot chattier than the previous former Atlanta Falcon, Vic Beasley, who they got last year.
Pretty low bar.
I don't think anybody in the media ever spoke to him.
So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a break here so we have some extended time and some flexibility when he does take the podium. I believe Jeffrey Simmons is going to be first up here. So we'll pass on that, even though Jeffrey is a lot of fun in his own right. But we'll go to the headliner today when he does go up there. So we want to make sure we have the time to do that in its entirety. So keep it right here. We'll have Julio Jones when he addresses the media for the first time as a member of the Titans coming up just around the corner. Stay tuned. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game. Julio Jones to take the podium and speak to the Nashville media and fans for the first time publicly since he has become a Titan. Went through the workout today. I guess maybe a little light rain might have fallen here and there. It's held off for the most part, it looks like, at this part of town, and looks like everything went well. So, Mark, as we await, and we're in the stall until he takes the podium, just a couple of more things that we continue to hit on. Some of the things that Jeff Saturday said. I think he acknowledged what I think a lot of us say. You can say all the right things as a receiver, right? But deep down, sometimes you know when you're sitting there looking at the stat sheet and you know you only got 3 catches or 3 balls thrown to you, that you have to overcome that, right? As a sports competitor, right? And that is going to happen to some of these guys on a team that should have a lot of different ways to beat you.
Yeah, Willie, I really believe that is going to be a major a major thought point going into just about every game. And it's like Jeff said, you're occasionally going to have those games where Julio's numbers might be down, but if the Titans win, for the most part, I don't think he's going to be that upset. Now, if it goes week to week where he just uses a decoy, somebody's not doing their job. So I don't imagine, he might not reach 10 touches a game every week, but I would imagine they'd be remiss if they didn't try to get the ball to him.
Oh, yeah. I think it should work itself out. It might be a process, and I think if people are patient with it, it is going to really work to their advantage. Jeffrey Simmons is right at the podium. In the meantime, let's drop in one other interesting thing that has just come down here. They're at the morning skate in Las Vegas on the hockey front. We will talk to Elliot Friedman at 1 o'clock for the latest on this. And, of course, he's the very best, right? So this is always something you want to listen to. But you got 2 great teams. You have Vegas leading Colorado 3-2. Colorado's head coach, Jared Bednar, is not in Vegas, at least at this moment, because of an irregularity in his COVID-19 test. I don't know much of the details on that. And sometimes you get it squared away, you hop a plane, and you can get there by the time the game starts, which is not until later tonight. But what a strange turn of events. You're in Vegas and you don't have your coach. Well,
and this series has absolutely flipped in favor of Vegas. They lose the first game 7-1, and a lot of people have mused that might have been the worst thing that Colorado could have done. Not that they could have avoided it, but they beat Vegas 7-1, barely beat them in overtime in Game 2, and then Vegas came back to win the next 3, including coming back from a 2-0 deficit to win Game 5 in Colorado 3-2, which when the Avs are playing golf this summer and not playing in the Stanley Cup Final, they're going to think about that game for a long time.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt about it. And they had a great chance right before they gave up the overtime game winner. So much happened in just the first 50 seconds of the overtime. It was all over right after that. One chance for the Avs, and then a block shot goes the other way, and then boom, it's over. So imagine having to play an elimination game without your coach. That is possibly going to be the case here. I can't think of, off the top of my head, another big game. We know COVID brings up these situations, right? We know Nick Saban had to sit out a game this past football season, but a game of this magnitude, off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind.
No, Willie, and you also know, and really can't probably say, but like many Predators fans, I despise the Vegas Golden Knights, the most overly entitled team in the NHL. It's the old line that the late, great governor of Texas, Ann Hutchinson, said about George Bush, and that is, he was born on third base and he thought he hit a triple. But Vegas gets handed this great team right out of the chute, and their long-suffering fans might finally get a Stanley Cup.
Well, to their credit, they were smart on how they did it. And it does bring to mind that we're going through this again, right, with Seattle, and they get, they see the blueprint, and we're going to go through this again. Like, how good is Seattle going to be?
I guarantee you that Florida will not give up Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault for a hill of beans.
Yes, which did happen.
God.
And that was part of the perfect storm that had an expansion team go to the Stanley Cup final their first year, and has been a contender each year since they've been in the league, and they're one game away from going to a conference final again.
Yeah, and you know it's funny. Yeah, we can joke about this. You know, the Preds got the two Ottawa Senators that turned out to be one. You know, Duchesne, the jury's out, but Turris and Duchesne, and Stone goes to Vegas, and they're going to build. You know, they're going to build a statue of him in front of that arena in about 10 years. He's been unbelievable as a captain and a player. And a lot of Preds fans ask me, what does Vegas have that we don't? And I said, Jonathan Marchessault. You know, a guy that is not a great skater, but, is always there, is always in the right place.
Yeah, he makes big plays. I'm seeing some tweets to the effect of there's a chance that if things go right, if he gets cleared, that by the time the game starts tonight, they could get Bednar physically. Of course, it's not too far from Denver to Vegas. Presuming he's still in Denver, he had to be held back. Who knows? He could be in the air by now, but hopefully he'll be there. You'd hate to be in that spot if you're the Avs, be without your head coach for an elimination game that you have to win to get back home for a Game 7.
Just tell him not to fly Pioneer Airlines. He might not make it there in time.
All right, let's take a quick break again. I think do we have the ability to do that? We do not. Okay, so we're still in the hold mode. I did see some interesting things from Jeffrey Simmons. Apparently, he is trying to lose weight, and he is trying to, I guess, streamline. He has worked the carbs out of the diet. He is not going vegetarian or vegan. But, he's born and raised in Mississippi. He loves talking about loving to eat pies. We've talked to him about, the good Southern cooking. Apparently, there's been an adjustment there in the diet.
Yeah, there's always a defensive lineman every year who's either put on weight or taken off weight.
Yeah, the vegan question, it was a hard no. It wasn't just like, I don't think I'll go vegan. It was a pretty adamant, no, it's not for me.
I remember when the former Sound Prince Fielder decided to go vegetarian, right? Remember Prince Fielder?
Yeah.
And that was kind of an upset right there. But he did do it for a while, right? I don't think he stuck with it forever, but he did it a decent amount of time. I don't think it affected his swing a whole lot.
How much weight did he lose?
That's a good question. I think he did drop some. I don't remember seeing him looking completely different on the diamond. But for a defensive lineman, if you're Jeffrey Simmons, you're already a heck of a player. But I guess trying to just reach a new level.
By the way, it was Senderick Marks who came in one year saying, went on a diet, lost 40 pounds. Next year, put on some beef. Put on some muscle, and wasn't really a good player until he went to Jacksonville.
Well, that is true. Boy, great names from the past. But Jeffrey Simmons, of course, is a guy that you would hope will benefit from the additions that they made in the offseason. Yeah. He's a guy that already is an immense talent, but you're hoping for that defense to get to a new level, right? And he's going to be a big part of it.
Well, I think Autry, is really going to help Jeffrey. And this has got to be the year where he explodes on the scene. We've sort of been teased a little bit because, he's shown us a lot, through his stay here. But the Titans drafted him because many felt like, he was going to be, an all-pro caliber player. And we haven't seen that guy every week, although, eating up blocks sometimes is a very unglamorous thing, and sometimes he's been called upon to do it. But you get that push from inside, you can really help the pass rush.
All right, Mike Vrabel is now at the podium. Let's check in and listen to what he has to say after Julio Jones' first day as a Titan.
Getting a look at him in person.
Well, yeah, I think that's the whole idea, is to have your players practice, and the ones that are new to our system, try to get them in here and get them acclimated to how we do things. Every place is different, and but it is exciting to have them in here and go through our meetings, start to learn his teammates and figure out who those people are and how they interact, and as well as some of our offense and the installation.
Jim Wyatt.
And what's first for him, Mike? I mean, I guess getting acclimated. Notice you spent a lot of time with Todd, maybe with the quarterbacks. How important is it to maybe get him up to speed now where it's better at training camp?
Well, I think that's something that's important. As soon as you can learn what to do and how to do it, you can transfer that out to the field. And he's run a lot of routes, caught a lot of passes, and been a very productive player. But I think that these things take time in new situations. So that's what we're focused on now, and that's why he was back here today, and we'll see him next week when we finish up the off-season program.
Joe Rexrode.
Mike, how do you think Julio Jones fits into this offense? But what do you think he does for other guys on this offense?
Right now, Joe, we're trying to really get him acclimated, and certainly he's a productive player. He's a big target, strong hand, sure-handed. Just really have enjoyed his attitude and the interactions that I've had with him about our football team and about how just his willingness to come in here and try to learn how we do things. So, his impact, obviously can help a lot of people. I think there's ways to do things, and then veteran players that have been successful in this league, can also try to explain things to younger players. Sometimes those are your best coaches, and I'm sure he'll provide some of that. But ultimately, we're just trying to figure out where he fits in and how he best gets acclimated to our system.
Luke.
Mike, you talk a lot about wanting to have versatility, and now you've got at least three receivers in Julio, Josh, and AJ who can play sort of all three positions and move inside and outside. What does it do for a passing game when you have those options to move guys around and no one is the designated X or designated slot guy?
Well, I think that is important. I think that's probably what we had talked about earlier in the offseason about the conceptual learning, Luke, is knowing the entire play or knowing the entire route and the concept behind it. And, are you going to be on the front side of the read? Are you on the back side? What we call different formations, where you are at based on, which one of those receiver spots you're playing. And, I just think it gives a lot of versatility to where we can line guys up and how we, function as an offense and how we, personnel things and who's in the game on certain packages.
Paul.
Hey, Mike. He obviously worked a long time with one quarterback. What can you do to facilitate he and Ryan learning each other, and how much time goes into that? How do you deploy things maybe differently during camp than you would usually?
I think that's the most important relationship. If you're a receiver, is the one with the quarterback. We talk all the time. There's a play that gets installed, and you talk about man or zone, or you talk about spacing or running a route. But at the end of the day, if I'm a receiver, I'm going to be where the quarterback wants me to be when he needs me to be there. And so that's my message to them is figure out, quickly where the quarterback wants you to be and get there. And if you get the ball, take advantage of your opportunity. So I think to your question, the only way that they do that is by practicing, by meeting, by having conversations. No different than what we would have, any of our quarterbacks or wide receivers do, when they're coming in here probably for the first time.
Turron.
Yeah, what's up, Coach? The conversation, kind of like with the onboarding process for Jones, how did that go as far as talking to him and making it clear, hey, you may not get 9 to 10 targets, but we'll get you involved, but it's a team offense and that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think, John, touched on, some of the onboarding process that you are referencing. And as always, conversations that I have with with our players are going to stay, between me and them. And but we have expectations here. We're going to treat every player the same way they treat the team, and that's no different than for Julio or for Racy McMath. That's just that's what we believe in, and we try to make our expectations here clear. We try to be direct with the players and try to get them to understand the way that we do things, and there hasn't been any sort of issue about really anything. And we'll, like anything else, we'll continue to make those expectations clear, and how we do things and what time we're out on the field or how we practice and all those other things.
John Glennon.
Mike, I was going to ask you on Julio also, just kind of wondered what your impressions were of how he has, come into a brand new team for the first time in over a decade, how he's approached new teammates, new coaching staff, OTAs, et cetera. Just kind of how he's gone through this the first, few days.
Yep. He came in after, for I guess would be the physical, and had a conversation, with me at length, had a conversation with Rob and Todd, and went through that first day of meetings, and needed to go back to Atlanta to get some stuff, and then we asked that he communicate with us when what his intentions were to come back, and he said I want to come back Wednesday night. I want to be there and working on Thursday, and obviously be a part of the mini camp. So all the conversations that I've had have been positive and really good, and they've been open dialogue. So there's really appreciate that. I know going to a new place, sometimes is different, but that's what it's going to look like. Every year that things are different, and there's change throughout the NFL.
Terry.
Coach, when you bring in a guy who's accomplished as much as Julio has, is it still a long acclimation process, or is it made much quicker given what type of guy he is and how long he's been around?
Terry, I'd hate to say one way or the other. It's going to take as long as it takes, and we'll see where he's at as we work our way through the end of minicamp, and unquestionably excited about having him. But to say, there's some sort of timetable on when he's going to know the entire offense and every detail that goes along with it, I hesitate to try to predict that.
Darren Stillman.
Hey, Mike, you played against offenses in your days, whether it was the Greatest Show on Turf or the Peyton Manning Colts teams that had multiple Hall of Famers on them in their primes. What was the key when you played against those, and then when you played with them in New England with a great offense, for that kind of offense with all of those great players to mesh well? What's the key for this group to mesh like those groups did?
I think it's, it comes down to always putting the team first and being willing to do whatever's best for the football team. And we understand that there's a lot of people that right now we'd like to get the football to. They only give us one football. So, I think that's that's what we're charged to do as coaches, to make sure that everybody fits into, what we're doing and get them to buy into what we believe in.
David Beauclair.
Mike, I'm sure you want to answer Julio questions all day, but Adam Kuhn, what's the challenge in the jump he's trying to make, and what have you seen that makes you think he's got a shot to do it?
Just wanted to try to take a look at Adam. Had followed his wrestling career for a while, and something that we looked at, and then I was a part of as a player, taking a former wrestler, and they developed into an offensive lineman with Stephen Neal. They have great wrestlers, especially at that elite level, have unbelievable balance, core strength, things that I think would translate well to an offensive lineman. But having not played the game, there's a lot of development that has to go on, pretty quickly for him to compete. But He's got a great attitude. He shows up. He competes. He goes hard. He just might not know what to do all the time. And I think we just have to continue to coach him and develop him and see what we can get out of him and how he develops.
Kayla.
Hey, Coach. I know that it's hey there. I know it's always cool when something like this happens. You get a big name, a pro like this, even just for us to see and watch. But how much can this just bring the energy of the team up? I mean, when you watch those guys out there, it's hard not to look at him and see what he does.
I think I think there's just excitement from everybody, Caleb. I think that you guys are unseasonably pleasant today as well. I'm sure our fans are excited. Our organization is excited, but we have to get to work. We got to put the work in, and that's what it comes down to in this business. It's not about what you've done; it's about what you're willing to do and what you will do. And I'm confident that Julio has begun that process.
Ben Arthur.
Hey, Mike. You obviously talked about how your conversations with Julio are for private, but just kind of generally speaking, have you just gotten the sense that he's just kind of eager to maybe prove that he still has kind of a lot left in the tank? A lot has been made of his age and just the injuries, the lingering injury he dealt with last year. Do you just feel like he's really just kind of driven, still has a pretty big fire just in terms of getting out there and showing people what he can do?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak for Julio or any of our players. So, I think that would be a great question for him. I think that is something that I wouldn't want to comment on. I just think that whatever everybody's motivation is, hopefully winning is high on that priority list.
Buck.
Hey, Mike, I know the offseason with minicamp is not yet over, but what kind of growth have you seen that you've liked from the tight end position?
Well, Matt, you see him showing up more. I think, Anthony has showed up in the red zone. Fergus, been a player that showed up in the red zone that, on third down, those really critical situation downs and areas of the football field, and they continue to improve. And, we're going to keep working and building with that group. Tommy Hudson has been here, and he was a young player that was with us on the practice squad. And I would say that, Buck, that the biggest improvement, we're going to have to wait until, training camp when we have, pads on and we're running the football. But that's really where some of those guys are going to probably come to light and make the most progress. Is going to be in our run game, and then there's routes and things that they do on first and second down. But Ferk right now is primarily that third down tight end and maybe that guy that we would look at in the red zone. But the other guys would be predominantly evaluated in training camp.
Diana Rossini.
Coach, it's pretty evident here in the way you're talking about the Julio situation that no matter what, it's certainly not going to change the way you coach this team, which is team first, playmaking second. But maybe it's a little bit of a stretch here. Obviously, in your own career as a player, you went from one team spending over a decade in New England and then getting traded. So you kind of have something in common a little bit with Julio. Have you leaned on that at all, or have you shared with him, what that's like to just go to a completely new place and really know nothing?
Well, we've had some really good conversations. I wasn't nearly half the player that Julio Jones is. I was a throw-in with Matt Castle. So I don't even think they knew I got traded. It's been really refreshing. I really feel a lot when I have conversations with Julio and, Rashawn and Derek is how these guys were coached in college. And I can always really appreciate players that have come from places like Alabama, where there's so much consistency in how they do things. And listening to Nick Saban and Coach Saban talk about this is how we do things, and it doesn't change. The players may be different each year, but or the coaches come in and we lose a lot of coaches, but we're still going to do things the way that we do them. And we've had some great conversations, and we're excited about having Julio here.
Couple more for Coach. Emmanuel Morgan, New York Times.
Hey, Coach. It seems like the value for receivers is kind of like changing over the past 2 seasons. Julio and DeAndre Hopkins were second-round picks. From your perspective, why is that? And then from coaching perspective, how valuable is it to have a number one guy as a receiver?
Well, Emmanuel, I can't comment on the analytics behind it or the compensation. We made a deal. I think, one thing I do know about deals is that everybody has to feel like they got something out of it. Atlanta got compensation. It's great to work with those people, with Arthur and Terry, like John mentioned. And then we got a player that we're excited about. So as far as having a number one receiver, we really are looking for guys that get open, that catch the ball, and are willing to try to block and finish longer than the guy with the football, whether they have it or somebody else does.
Jim Wyatt.
Mike, what do you like about what you've accomplished during OTAs and what's maybe important next week as you wrap up the off season with the mini camp?
I think we've improved. I think our conditioning has improved. Jim, we feel like we play a certain style and stress the effort and finish on every play. And to do that, you have to be conditioned enough to play that way. And I think there's one thing about being able to run and go out there and do some 40s or some 50s or whatever they are, but your ability to go and play the football game and go play the game in the manner in which we expect it to be played takes a level of conditioning. And so I think that's improved. We've gotten a lot of third down in. We're moving on. We've got some red zone in. So just excited to finish up next week and move on into the summer and get these guys back.
That's Mike Vrabel, head coach, Tennessee Titans. And you could hear that it wasn't just the local media asking questions today. Pretty big day. Julio Jones in a Titans uniform for the first time. And he is expected, or reportedly, to talk on the Zoom here shortly. So we will have that for you. Also, Elliot Friedman will join us, the best when it comes to NHL coverage. A lot going on around the league. We will pick his brain next. So keep it right here. Coverage of Julio Jones' first day, plus Elliot Friedman. We do it all here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Busy day. Julio Jones in a Titans uniform for the first time. We will hear from him shortly as he faces the media. It's not only the local media today, but there are a lot of people from the outside checking in and seeing how it's going. Big story, of course, across the NFL. Meanwhile, it is time for our weekly visit with the very best when it comes to NHL hockey coverage. Elliot Friedman from Hockey Night in Canada. The 31 Thoughts, a lot going on to break down with him. Willie Daunic, Mark Howard with you today. Chase and Darren are on vacation. Elliot, I can't speak for Chase and Darren right now. I think they're having fun. They're going to various ballparks. They're playing golf. Who knows? But they're getting a little rest and relaxation. And I would imagine right now you're pretty busy, especially with the story going on over in Vegas where you got Jared Bednar, I guess, iffy as to whether he can make it to the bench tonight.
Yeah, that's a wild one. That's a really wild story. One of the things we're trying to even determine right now is he even in Vegas? That's one of the other questions we're trying to determine right now. And it sounds like whenever this comes up, like an irregularity with a COVID test, guys, you always think that there's someone who's gotten a positive test and that someone is saying it can't be positive. It's got to be a false positive. And the challenge with that is that there's a certain process that you have to go through. I think you have to have 2 negative tests to prove a false positive. So I think that's all part of the situation here. And the question is if they can get it done in time for Bednar to coach. But it's certainly a weird situation. We have had games this year, and Vegas actually had a situation this year where their GM had to coach them for a game because one of their coaches tested positive, and because the other coaches were declared to be close contacts, they couldn't be there either. So it's wild. Like there's no question about it. This is like one of those things you're kind of thinking, oh God, I don't want it to happen, and now here it is. It's potentially happening.
And it's been such a great series, too. These are 2 elite teams for sure. And this is a reminder, right, as we see Carolina go down. We all were a little bit surprised that it was only 5 games. But this becomes the part of the year where you see teams that have had tremendous regular seasons. They look like they've done everything right, and they're out in the second round. And it makes you really question how you're doing things because it seems to be going on a roll so well for other teams. Right, but that's the mystery. That's why we love the sport.
That's true, and there's a big change between the regular season and the playoffs in this league, and it's not. People say the officiating changes. I don't think the officiating changes as much as the players do. I think people who have complaints about referees. I think a lot of those same complaints exist in the regular season. I think the players they're more determined, they're edgier, they're harder. They will do things to each other that they won't necessarily do in the regular season. Everybody is more detail-oriented, and you're also playing the same team all the time on a different schedule than, say, 4 games and 6 nights against 4 different teams in the regular season. And I just think everybody is more demanding of themselves and their teammates and what they give. And I think the game changes a lot. Like Carolina, I think they're really good. They just got steamrolled by an outstanding team. And if you give them a power play, they're going to ram it right down your throat. Like that's how good Tampa is right now. And, it's not that Carolina's bad. They just got crushed by a really good opponent. And, I look at Colorado, and they're in big trouble now. They were up 2-0. Now they're down 3-2. If they lose this series, does that mean they're bad? No, it just means that you're going to get beat by a really good opponent that could go on and win the Stanley Cup. That's life, and you have to believe in your process.
Yeah, and we saw how great Carolina's penalty kill is, and they got carved up every time Tampa went on the power play. That was impressive. So, Elliot, let's
shoot up and spit out.
You're right. That's a good way of putting it. Let's talk about Bruce Cassidy for a minute. I can imagine the reaction that you guys had up there. That's one that, all of us in the media, you just start laughing because you're like, okay, now this is going to get some people's attention. But just the way he went about it, I don't know if I've ever seen a coach that matter of fact, scripted almost. And, of course, the New York Saints, you can imagine the field day that has been going on with the Islander fans. They had the chant going starting from the first period, and then even after the final horn sounded there, he created a monster. But, you know, who's the PR guy telling him to go that route? Because, boy, did that ever backfire.
Well, did you also see the New Orleans Saints tweet last night?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I mean, that was awesome. I laughed my head off when I saw that thing. I was like, that's really good. I don't think, like, honestly, in those situations, guys, like, I don't think the PR people have any control over that. I really don't. I think that, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Bruce Cassidy knew how his organization felt, how his organization backed him. Like, I don't think you're doing that if you don't feel that, you know, the top hockey people in your organization feel the same way. And I think it's calculated. I think it was concentrated. I think it was an attempt to buy calls. Now, we don't see that very often in this league. But I will say, before the playoffs every year, there's a conference call between the commissioner, I think the deputy commissioner, Colin Campbell, who runs hockey operations for the league, and all of the coaches and general managers who are in the playoffs. And every year, the commissioner, Gary Bettman, he warns the coaches and the GMs, I don't want any complaints about officiating. If I get complaints about officiating, then you're going to get fined. And the weird thing this year was there were 3 or 4 coaches during the first round, and you guys saw it firsthand.
We did.
Rod Brindamore of Carolina was one, who said things, and nothing happened. And I think this year the league was trying to be patient because it's been such a hard year with COVID and the way you haven't really been able to do anything. So I think the league was trying to be a little more patient. But I heard after the first round, they were like, okay, this has to stop. Like, now we're warning you, stop. And Cassidy did what he did, and he got fined. Now, I talked to a couple coaches who'd done that in the past, and they said, we got crushed for doing it. You know, we got no calls. And one of them actually had the data to prove it. He said, I can't use it because it'll make it obvious which coach I am. But he sent me, like, the next 20 games what the penalty calls were against his team, and they got destroyed. So I actually said during our broadcast last night, you know, the Bruins got the first 2 calls. I told that story, and I said I was surprised. And they actually but they didn't get a call that they should have gotten later, but they didn't lose because of officiating. They lost because the Islanders were better. And that's the one thing we all have to remember about this.
We're speaking to Elliot Friedman, of course, of Sportsnet in Canada, on top of everything in the NHL. And, Elliot, you know, we still, you know, sort of cheer for Barry Trotz. What about the job he and the Islanders did in snuffing out the Bruins, especially in Game 6?
Well, I never, like, I'm a guy, I like to gamble, okay? Like, I like to gamble on sports. I'm a wagerer. I never bet against the Islanders. I have a belief. I'm either betting them or I'm not betting that game at all because they always play the same. They, no matter if it goes right or goes wrong, they always revert back to themselves. They have a system. They stick to the system. Everybody's empowered by being given a role, and they all eventually over the long term will stick to that role. And so, like, they did it. Like, I'm not going to bet on the Tampa series because, like, Tampa beat them in the Eastern Final last year. I just think Tampa's too good for them. But, like, the Islanders, to me, like, a few years ago, their star player, John Tavares, left, and we all thought they were going to be terrible. And I remember talking to one player on the team, it was Cal Clutterbuck, about, you know, going back to camp for the first time after Tavares left. And he said when he went to camp there, he thought they were going to be, initially he wasn't very excited about it. And then he said after a couple weeks being around Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz, he said to me, we're going to be better than everyone thinks. And I said, why do you think that? And he says, because the way these guys, like, they have a plan for everything. It's like, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. and we're going to do this. And when the puck is here, we're going to do this. And when the puck is there, we're going to do that. And the other thing, too, is they're intimidating. They play a really tough style of game that, was very popular 20 or 30 years ago. Not as many teams do that now. And they protect each other, and they've made it a big part of intimidation has become a big part of their identity. And in the playoffs, like in the regular season, a lot of teams don't play like that. In the playoffs, everybody does, or at least tries to. But it's their identity. And I just think that they're run by people who have a plan, and the players have bought into the plan. They stick to the plan. And like Montreal right now, they're Islanders light. They created a plan. Everybody sticks to the plan. They all do that. And in the playoffs, that can win.
As far as the expansion draft, which is a few weeks away, of course, after the final, if the Predators presumably leave Duchesne and Johansson out, does Seattle take one of them?
I think that's going to be tough. I think one of the things about Seattle that I'm hearing right now, and it remains to be seen if this is going to be true, but one of the things, like, there's a minimum amount of money they have to take. I think it's 60% of the salary cap. I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's around there. And, I know there's a lot of teams expecting that Seattle will take as close to that number as they can to maintain as much financial flexibility as they can. So I would be surprised. Unless Nashville did something to incentivize that, and it would be costly, I don't see Seattle doing that.
We're talking to Elliot Friedman. Elliot, I want to hit you with the Canadian team that's advanced to the Final Four. You knew when the season started, one of them was going to get there. I don't know how many people, you used the wager reference. I wonder how many people wagered Montreal before the season started, and then even as the playoffs began, as the 4 seed. But it's all come together for them. And one note that was, kind of made the headlines, you can understand why, but they've got a lot of money invested in Carey Price. He didn't have a great regular season. He's been what you would hope for in these playoffs. And I didn't realize this until I saw it, but he's the first player to have a $10 million plus salary to be on a team that is advanced, even one round in the playoffs, let alone two. But it's coming together well for the Habs.
It is a great stat. It is a phenomenal stat, and I didn't realize it either until I saw it. It shows you on a night where 20 guys dress, it still is a team game. Even your best forward only plays usually maybe maximum 25 minutes. So there's 35 other minutes a game where, other people have got to carry it. It is a good reminder, but the sport is changing, guys. Like, the younger players are making more money at an earlier age than ever, and this is going to happen more and more often. But, the thing about Montreal, it's funny. At the beginning of the year, there were a lot of people that liked them. A lot of people that liked them. They felt they were built for the playoffs, and they started out really well. As a matter of fact, one of my coworkers, Chris Johnston, he called them a juggernaut, and then they started losing. Literally, days after Chris gave them this kiss of death, they started losing, and every time they lost, there would be people on the internet who would tweet out the picture of the Marvel superhero Juggernaut.
The Juggernaut with the helmet.
Lying on the ground, beaten up, with a Canadiens logo on it. And I would just laugh my head off because I thought it was so clever. But, we all counted them out. They looked awful at the end of the season. It took them, by math, they were going to make the playoffs, but it would have taken Vancouver or Calgary an incredible comeback to beat them. But the Canadiens were going so badly that it took them a ridiculously long time to clinch and get in. And a lot of us wrote them off. If you look at the our predictions at Sportsnet and you look at the ESPN predictions, for example, for for that first round series, almost everybody picked the Maple Leafs. The Canadiens actually, after round 2, almost everyone picked the Jets, and the Canadiens did a scroll of it, and they put it on their Twitter page. Nobody had the respect for them based on the way the regular season went. But it's like we talked about the Islanders. They found an identity. They've got a big, strong, tough D. They play very disciplined. They know if they make a mistake, as you talked about, Price is at a high level. He's going to cover most of them up. And they've got some really talented forwards who can score when given the opportunity. I mean, it's not a fluke. They've earned it. They deserve it. I think it's an enormous challenge for them to beat either Vegas or Colorado, whoever they're going to get next. But, they're not here on a fluke. They're here. They deserve it.
And, Elliot, speaking of Montreal, doesn't it teach us a lesson about evaluating a trade? Subban for Weber, how early on Canadian fans were ready to run Mark Bergevin out of town, and now that trade looks a lot different. 4 or 5 years down the road with Shea playing some of his best hockey and him obviously being healthy.
Yeah, I think it's totally true. I think the thing about that whole deal was it was so stunning. Like, normally when a trade's coming, and a lot of times you have a chance to kind of figure it out, or at least have an idea that it might be possible. But that one came totally out of left field. And I think the other thing, too, was it really affected the personality, like the fan bases. Like, you guys know how much Shea was beloved there, and there was a large segment of the fan base that loved Subban in Montreal. And, I think that was all part of it. But it's a good reminder. Like Weber isn't will never command the attention that Subban does. Their personalities are just so different. But, you guys know Weber. He's a hell of a player. He's a great person. He's committed. He cares a lot. And these are the times of the year he really shines. And, there have been so many times in Montreal where I know last year his knee was really bad, and this year I think his thumb is badly hurt, but he just says, screw it, and he goes out there and play. And if your captain and one of your best players is doing that, then other people fall in line. It makes such a huge difference, and I'm really happy for him because I think a lot of people really think the world of Weber, and but what the funny thing about that is, guys, is that when they fell down 3-1 to Toronto in the first round, like I have some friends who still live in Montreal, they said the call-in radio shows, they said they were unbelievable. They didn't even want to wait till the fourth game got lost. They were running all of those guys out of town. And they were killing them, just killing them. And now, 2 weeks later, they're all of us who picked the Canes to lose, they're just destroying us. I don't know if you guys saw, but there's a building, the tallest building in Canada, and for a period of time, the tallest freestanding structure in the world is the CN Tower right in downtown Toronto. It's right next to where the Leafs play. And the company that owns it, it's a government-owned building. It's not privately owned. So after Montreal beat Winnipeg, they lit it up in Canadiens colors right in downtown Toronto. And I took a picture of it because I was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. And that was 2 or 3 days ago, and people are still mad about it. People in Toronto are furious, and the people who are Canadiens fans, they are just gloating over how this building right next to where the Leafs play, Scotiabank Arena, is lit up like this. It's hilarious stuff, man. You guys, we're fighting over the lights on a building right now.
Canada does love the hockey for sure. And Elliot, thanks a lot for joining us. You had me flashing back when Mark was asking you about Shea Weber and that trade that summer day. I got a text from Stu Grimson. I was driving to the radio show, and I looked, and it was a hurried text because I think Stu got it maybe just a minute or two before it hit publicly. And I did a double take. I was like, wait a minute, he can't be serious. Because I had never even given it a thought, right? And all of a sudden, it's true. I mean, we'll never forget that day, no question. Two incredibly captivating players in their own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shook the earth, I remember.
Oh, man. Elliot, thanks again for the time. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs. This is your time to shine. As it always is, we love watching it. And thanks a lot for your time again.
All right, guys. Have yourselves a great weekend.
All right. Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet, 31 Thoughts, Hockey Night in Canada. Wow. What would be the equivalent of that? Can you imagine somebody flying on the Batman building, what, a Ravens logo or something?
Yeah, maybe a Ravens logo
or a
Colts
Blackhawks
logo.
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jeez, that is harsh. Good grief.
Auburn colors in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. All right, when we come back, we'll hear from Julio Jones. He's been talking to the media the last few minutes. In fact, I think it's still going. Definitely some great stuff you're going to hear. So keep it right here. Julio Jones, his first day on the job with the Tennessee Titans. His voice answering the questions coming up next here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Campbell right on it with the musical theme. The new kid in town. Number 2, that would be Julio Jones. He visited with the Nashville media today after his first practice as a Titan. Let's hear it.
Hey, Julio, welcome to town. You've been with the same team for so long. What's it like joining a new team, and what's the reception been like here in Nashville?
First off, man, I just want to thank Atlanta. You know, it was home for me for the last decade. The fan base, the Atlanta Falcons, you know, the whole organization. Without them, you know, they gave me the opportunity to showcase, you know, my ability and what I can do, and, you know, obviously love the game. But, you know, being here at the Titans, I love it. I'm very excited to be a part of this organization. Just the team camaraderie, just the whole atmosphere and everything here just feels like when I was in college, you know, at the University of Alabama. It's amazing here. So that's where I'm at right now. Had a great day today. Just finished the workout. So I'm excited about being here.
Teresa.
Julio, how are you feeling? You know, a lot of people have been pointing out that you missed some games last year. How are you feeling right now? Obviously, you worked today, but for a guy who's 32 and people are ready to write you off, how are you feeling right now? And how do you expect to answer those folks?
For me, at the end of the day, I believe in me. I know what I have in the tank. And we're talking about age is 32. Like, I'm young. Like, in football, you can say it's old, but you either do it or you don't. You know, this game don't change for me. I'm still fast. I'm still strong. And to, you know, the games last year, I just, you know, had an issue where I didn't take enough time to heal up properly. But, you know, that was just my decision on going out there and just playing. There's no excuses, things like that. But I'll be ready to go. So for those who questioning my health and things like that, just stay tuned.
Turron.
Yeah, Julio, obviously, you know, in your time in Atlanta, you were targeted frequently. That probably isn't going to be the case here with the Titans, but have you had conversations with some of the guys just about, you know, adjusting to that and accepting it and still excelling?
It's just, you know, at the end of the day, you want to create a winning culture. You know, however you need to do it to get the job done. My whole career, I've never been a stat guy. You know, previous years, everybody always asking me, what you thinking you're gonna do? What's your prediction? You know, things like that. I've never been a stat guy. I'm a team guy. I'm just excited to be a part of the organization, and whatever they need from me to do, you know, I'm willing to do it and play my role and play it at a high level.
Kayla.
Hey, Julio, welcome to Nashville. You know, you got a lot of guys reaching out on this team that wanted you here. AJ Brown, that's going to be across from you, one of those main guys. What has your relationship been already with him? I know you probably haven't seen him a lot, but how excited are you to work across from him this year?
I'm very excited. Just for us to be a 1-2 punch or a 1-1 punch, or however you want to look at it. He's definitely a number one receiver. Definitely a dog, very has that competitive nature in him. And just showing him, you know, little things that I know from, you know, experience being in the league. But he has it all, you know. And we've been hanging out even before this, even when I was in Atlanta. He used to call me and things like that. So we always talked on the phone. Off season, we talked. So now just being able to play with him, it's going to be great, and it's going to be a very exciting season.
Paul.
Hi. After spending so much time with Matt, how much of a challenge will it be to develop a relationship with Ryan? How much time do you think it will take, and what are the keys to building that relationship?
Me and Ryan, we done hung out already. We went out to dinner. And just talking, you know, communication. Excuse me. But I don't think it's going to take no time at all. I mean, he's a veteran player. I'm a veteran player. You know, you just got to go out there and just repetition at the end of the day, really just going out there and just, you know, this is where I wanted at. Can you put it here? And where he wants me at, can I get there? So it's just us working together, because at the end of the day, you know, as long as we're on the same page, we're going to be successful.
Joe Rexroad.
Yeah, Julio, just wondering, how much in terms of looking at this offense you've considered
You break. I can't hear you.
AJ? Oh,
You went out.
sorry. Has that helped? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I was just wondering, looking at this offense, how you feel like you fit in, how you, Josh, and AJ might be able to move around, and then just what it will mean to play with a running back like Derrick Henry behind you.
I mean, defense is like, you really don't have to pick your poison. So, I mean, if you want to, stay in the box, put, 9 in the box, right? Guy like Derrick Henry in the backfield, you got to respect him. So then that's when me and AJ go to work outside. And then if you only got 8 in the box, Derrick gonna go to work in the backfield. Great offensive line, things like that, scheme, stuff like that. But I mean, you just got to pick your poison at the end of the day. But we're just gonna go out there and play for one another. That's the culture of the team here. Just going out there and enjoying it, just having fun, and also just do your job at the end of the day.
John Glennon.
Hey, Julio, I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about maybe your decision, after a decade to move on from Atlanta, what went into that? And do you feel like you had any say-so at all in where you might wind up? Did you at least provide some input, or was it, did you just sit back and wait kind of?
Like I said, at the end of the day, Atlanta was amazing to me. I'm, obviously with my new team now. I'm excited to be here, and that's that for us, that situation. So, I mean, I love it. Like the organization, the people there, my teammates, like I said, the fan base, everybody. I enjoyed my decade there. I'm on a new chapter in my life. This is where my focus at, and can't wait to get started. So,
Ben Arthur.
Hey, Julio, welcome to Nashville. You talked about A.J. Brown earlier. I was wondering what you kind of made of his recruiting campaign, like the Instagram, like the screen recording, like the audio. He shared some kind of like audio file of, a message he sent you on Instagram and just, TikTok and all that. What did you kind of make of just how badly he wanted you? Obviously, you guys had a relationship, but just his efforts to want you.
Right. It's just who he is. Just a great guy. And he's gonna be a great teammate as well. It's just, his respect that he has for me. And just like I said in our previous conversations, even before, probably the trade came about and things like that, just us communicating, me helping him out, and now, just being under one roof, being on the same team with one another is just like, probably a dream, what I'm saying? But what he don't know is that, I love to play with him as well. So it's definitely mutual in that sense. So like I said, it's gonna be exciting. We just gotta, put that work in first. So
Terry.
Julio, when it became, I guess, clear that the Titans were a contender to get you, how much investigating did you do on your own, kind of about the organization and the team, and kind of do little fact-finding missions with guys maybe that you knew or knew of around the league?
Well, I didn't do too much. I just know guys anyways that's on the team. Like I said, like Derrick and AJ, right? And Terry Robisky was here, Harry Douglas was here, things like that. So just knowing about the organization then, but also it's just you have to be here to understand, the feeling here, as far as the fan base and the way they treat you, and it's unconditional about, just effort, just like you just feel like you can just go out there and just give your all, no matter what happens, they're gonna be behind you, right? Instead of just going out there and thinking, okay, if I make a mistake, I do this, I'm to blame or I'm shamed and things like that. It definitely had that college experience atmosphere here. So that's what I love about it as well. And just the culture of the team.
Just a couple more for you, Julio. Diana Rossini.
Hey, Julio, good to see you. Been a minute. Welcome to Tennessee. So you've done a really great job of explaining sort of what this has been like for you.
Yeah.
But to go from Atlanta, where they they do things different there. They have when you were there, to hear where it's definitely a change for you. What is that like for you to go from Atlanta to now Nashville at 32? What has this been like? Can you give an example maybe where you realize, well, I'm not in Atlanta anymore?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's football, right? Like every game, it's just like game planning. You got to play certain teams a certain way. You're gonna do things differently. So you got to just be ready on the fly at the end of the day, and that's the whole gist of things of being a professional, being a veteran is not you got to make the uncomfortable comfortable to you, and just different situations. Like I feel like I can do any and everything. Whether if it's blocking, going out there and catching 10 or 12 balls or whatever, or catching 2 or 3 balls. At the end of the day, it's just going out there and just doing what you need to do to for the team to be successful. So I don't look at it like, okay, well, my target's going to go down or this is going to go down. Like none of us knows how that's going to work out. So it's just speculations and everybody just looking at what they've done in the past and things like that. But who knows how people are going to play us now? Who knows anything? So it's just like you just got to be ready for everything. And for me, just being a professional, what I do is just to be ready for everything. And it's just as far as I study, working out, and just being ready to go.
Yeah, Julio. From good luck over there in Nashville.
Thank you.
From the Atlanta perspective, could you shed some light on how we went from Falcon for life to you won the trade to Tennessee?
Yeah, that's just me and the Falcons. We have an agreement at the end of the day. We discussed everything, and we just made the decision. I mean, it's just cut and dry. It's nothing to it. It's football, it's business. So, you just got to accept whatever happens. So it just, like I said, just mutual agreement on it. And, we just split up. So.
Was the firing of Coach Dan Quinn a factor in that process, or was it a bunch of factors, a myriad of factors to where y'all decided to part ways mutually?
No. It wasn't nothing to do with Dan Quinn, the firing of Dan Quinn, anything like that. It just, like I said, it just came to an agreement and we made the decisions and we're here now. So, like I said, I'm here. I'm in Nashville. I'm excited to be here. Expect big things from us. Just by our effort and what we're going to play the game.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Last question for you. Is there any significance to jersey number 2?
No, I just really picked it. Me and AJ and T Hill was pretty much at dinner just talking, and then I was just like, he tried to give me the 11, and I was like, but I don't want it. It's your number, So I was like, I'm just gonna go with the 2. I don't know. I was just like, me, you, Derek, we're not this, since excluding in Tannehill, he's 17. He's got, he's 17, right? But the 2, 1 plus 1 is 2. Then 2 and times 11 is 22. So it's kind of like, you don't have to deal with us. It's all 4 of us actually, but you don't have to deal with the whole offense. It takes all 11 guys. But it just some things just to keep the guys going and just have fun with it. Because at the end of the day, it's our job, but we want to have fun with it.
1 plus 1 is 2. 11 times 2 is 22. Pretty interesting. How Julio Jones arrived at the number 2. All right, great stuff. A lot to process there. Mark and I have been listening. We'll give you our thoughts, some of the highlights of Julio Jones and his first press conference as a Titan. I'd have to say in one word, impressive. Impressive. I don't think I hadn't really listened to him in depth a whole lot before, but he knew the questions, the issues that were at hand. He was ready for all of them. Stay tuned. We'll come back and talk about it to end the show here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Final segment of the show today. Jared is poised and ready in the on-deck circle. Stillman Company at 2 o'clock. More on Julio Jones. He'll have his breakdown. He just completed his first press conference, first day on the job with the Titans. Hey, go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. Purchase a $30 Boomba's Craft Pizza and Tap House gift card for only $15. Try their award-winning pizza, 20-plus local beers and drafts at all locations, including one on the east side, right around the corner from my house. It's the place to go to bring the family or to come for pizza, beer, and sports. Always big TV screens tuned into the games you want. 4 locations locally: Bellevue, Murfreesboro, Spring Hill, and East Nashville. Huge video wall, and it's brand new, rebuilt from the tornado. It is awesome. Other deals happening now, including buy one, get one free for Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, plus $20 grain and berry gift card for $10. All these deals available by going to thegamenashville.com. So, Mark, we both absorbed the first press conference from Julio Jones. I have to say, I really admire his professionalism and readiness for the questions he knew were coming.
Yeah, he's ready to move on. He's not going to elaborate really why he left Atlanta. He doesn't want to leave a stink bomb there. But here's the other thing, Willie. I'm an action, not words guy. And what impressed me was, he was there day one when he was supposed to. He didn't pull a Vic Beasley and take 2 weeks, to put together his personal effects or anything like that. And Beasley was signed in the offseason. So, this was a guy, again, acted like a pro, showed up for work, did what he had to do. And, in front of his first press conference, was impressive. And that's the way he's going to be. And that was his reputation. But he's happy to be here, which should excite Titans fans. And he's grateful to Falcons fans, which have to make them feel good. But, I don't think he was going to get into the nuts and bolts on why he wanted out in Atlanta. But, that's what happened.
And I just like the no-nonsense tone of everything. And a theme that jumped out at me, Mark, and it started with Mike Vrabel. Like, I don't think I've ever heard Mike Vrabel just sort of unsolicited bring Nick Saban into a discussion.
Yeah.
But that Alabama thread, right, with Derrick Henry, with Julio Jones, they both sort of talked about it. He talked about a college atmosphere that reminds me of Alabama, that I like this environment. Of course, he hasn't been in the environment very much, but that is an interesting perspective to hear him discuss. And Mike Vrabel, of all people, seems to be embracing that.
Not a bad place to replicate, Will, you think?
They'll lose a lot.
And not only because you don't see a lot of people wanting to leave Alabama, but you see a lot of players reaching their potential, and that's even more important. And that's exactly something that's going to resonate with Julio Jones. There's a reason why those 5-star guys go to Alabama, not only because of the rings, because it gets them to where they want to go. And I always say the difference between Saturday and Sunday is more than 24 hours, especially when it comes to football. And we've seen it so many times in the college game. But it's Julio Jones is one of the embodiments of Alabama and the way that they do things. And since he arrived in the NFL, he has been sort of a pro's pro, and that's exactly the kind of guy Mike Vrabel wants on his team.
Mentioned the injury last year, which is really, when you get down to it, the first, I guess maybe the second significant injury he's had. I don't recall exactly the first one. I think he had one other year where he missed some time. But in the last several years, his availability has been really good up until last year. And he said, last year I made a mistake. I tried to come back too early when I wasn't ready, which certainly happens a lot with hamstrings, right? Because there's no exact science. We see it so many times. A guy is so eager to get back in. You want to help the team, and it's not quite ready. It feels good, but then it just takes that one little move where it doesn't feel right again. But he was ready to address the I'm healthy. I'm ready to go. I'm only 32, but I feel young.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Titans fans should be excited about this. This is not a guy who's going to be looking to get out of practice or whatever. He wants to come in, wants to learn the playbook, wants to make a connection with his quarterback because he knows how important that is, for success. And, it's very early in the going, but he has certainly made a good first impression.
We were talking to Elliot Friedman earlier this hour about Bruce Cassidy and perhaps a PR problem, stepping out and doing what you absolutely should not do in a press conference in terms of, a situation that you're in with officials. Well, Julio Jones, he knew the questions about targets and changing addresses, coming into a new squad that's had a lot of success. You got Derrick Henry. If you would have scripted out the perfect answers, really, for all those questions, I don't know that you could have scripted it better. I mean, I know it's just words. Like you said, actions will be more important, and when it really plays out, that's when it's going to be tested. But the mindset of, the quotes that he's put out there, if there's a week where I catch 2 or 3, that's fine. If there's a week where I catch 10 or 11, that's fine. But I'm here to win.
That's what you want to hear. You didn't go all Keyshawn on him. Just throw me the damn ball.
He did not.
Although that wouldn't be a bad way to
and
go.
that is refreshing. We know some of those receivers, that's part of what makes them great.
Oh,
right?
Listen.
Is their desire for the ball and their belief that I don't care what you do. If you throw me the ball, good things will happen. But he doesn't. He's a great blend of that's actually true, but also he's gonna keep that mindset of I'm not gonna say it out loud like that.
I used to say you could always tell if Terrell Owens had good stats or bad stats. You didn't even have to turn up the volume. It was his body language.
That's right.
The Cowboys could have won by 45, but if he didn't get his, he wasn't happy. If he got his and they lost, you'd see him, kind of happy, but looking a little fake sad because his team lost.
I like that. By the time he first meets the media, he's already had dinner with Ryan Tannehill. That's interesting. It's a good, again, proactive move. When you go to a new team, you don't just sit back and say, okay, let's feel each other out. I don't know who initiated it, but what a great move.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Tannehill. Willie, you just hear, Titans people in the organization raving about his leadership skills and how as soon as he became the number one guy, he jumped right in and those guys, he's taken those guys on a pretty good ride so far.
He sure has. This is another dynamic that we discussed, and you could feel it a little bit. But I think Julio Jones, he presented it as equals, right? He called it in terms of A.J. Brown. He didn't say a 1-2 punch. He said, let's call it a 1-1 punch if you want to. But I think about this a lot, right? And Mark, we all had the people that we enjoyed watching when we were younger as teenagers, right? You look up to those guys. Like when Julio Jones was starting to star in the NFL, I don't know exactly what A.J. Brown's age was, but he was probably playing a lot of Madden football and emulating Julio Jones and then taking it out on the field and watching it. There's that admiration that's going on, but it looks like Julio Jones is trying to put it on more of a friendship, more of a colleague kind of thing. I think that's a really interesting thing. But at the same time, I think he appreciated how badly and how welcoming this Titans team has been to him, especially with A.J. Brown.
And here's how it appears, Willie. It doesn't appear as though they're going to be any this is my team. No, this
right.
is my team. This isn't going to be Kobe and Shaq. And I don't think either guy cares who gets the credit as long as they win football games.
Interesting first day on the job. Tomorrow we'll have more. Of course, Vanderbilt Super Regional will be going on alongside of our show tomorrow. We'll be updating that game, and we will continue to discuss Julio Jones as a Titan. We'll hit some other topics as well that are going on. We'll hit the NHL playoffs. We'll talk a little Predators and their offseason. maneuvering that's going to take place here over the next several weeks.
Elliot
Lots going
Friedman
on.
had some interesting things to say, so we'll go
sure
back
did.
to what he said about Johansson and Duchesne.
No question. That is, of course, a huge looming question. The expansion draft, what to do with who to protect, etc. All right. We hand the baton off to Jared Stillman. He'll be ready to rock and roll. I'm sure he has listened to every second of these press conferences with the Titans. He'll be all over it. Stay tuned. You're listening to Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Mark Howard will be back with me again tomorrow. Mark, great work.
Enjoyed it, Will.
All right. Elijah Campbell is